meeting of the Burnside Council. Please stand for the acknowledgements. We acknowledge this land that we meet on today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important as the Kaurna people today. We also pay respect to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people visiting or attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia. On behalf of the City of Burnside, I also gratefully acknowledge and pay respect to those who gave their lives for this country and its people. Please remain standing for the opening prayer. We pray for understanding and guidance in our debate as we make decisions that will impact on the lives of all those who reside, study, work and visit the City of Burnside. Grant us wisdom as we serve our community. Please be seated. I welcome members to the gallery and ask them to observe in respectful silence as the Chamber deliberates on matters that relate to the City of Burnside. Should there be a fire or any other emergency, the alarm will sound and you are asked to follow directions of the Council staff. I need to remind that all Council meetings are live streamed through the City of Burnside website and a copy of tonight's agenda is available by downloading from this website. I remind elected members of the importance of using their microphones appropriately so that those at home can hear clearly. Now we have no apologies and we have no leave of absence. I would like a mover to confirm the minutes. Councillor Davis. Seconder, Councillor Cornish. All those in favour? Carried. We have deputations. We have two. The first one is from Mr. Kevin Whitford. Is Mr. Kevin, would you please come to the seat in the middle, Mr. Whitford? And if you would mind, please just stating your name and the topic that you are going to address this evening.
Yeah, Kevin Whitford, 6 Dulwich Avenue.
And I'll just turn my button off, and if you'd press that button on there, your light will come on.
Speak. Yeah. Kevin Whitford, 6 Dulwich Avenue, Dulwich.
I'm sorry, I'll just interrupt you. You have 5 minutes with a warning bell at 4.
Yeah, I won't need 5. So one question, one statement. It's really the parking issues on the western end of Dulwich. So being at 6 Dulwich Avenue down the bottom end, so there's two parts to it. Why did the council seek to change the manner in which parking permits were meted out? So from February 2018, it's changed from something like 3,800 to about 696. And then when it was challenged, it was defeated. And the question is why and how did that happen? The second is more of a statement, and that is the parking and demand down the western end of Dulwich Avenue, which is between Kitchener on the southern side and Scott on the northern side, has exponentially increased since the commercial premises were built on the northeast corner of Dulwich and Fullerton, which includes Radiology SA, Deloitte's, Thomas Farms, etc. Prior to this, there was no issue at all with parking. So from the observation, the parking demands are driven by the customers of Radiology SA, not knowing that car park exists for their customers. Prior to that, there's no signage. I noticed lately there has been signage. Secondly, employees of all those businesses park their cars all day along that strip, which raises the question of why that's happening. And that's happening for some time. So why the park range is not giving them tickets when I've received 2, and to what end that's going to change. So the demand on the parking at that end has been driven from observation from the employees of those businesses parking there all day long. So what it appears is if the residential rights have been substituted by the employee rights of that business group, which has been there for about 2 to 3 years. So that's it.
If you could turn yours off for a moment. Is there anyone who wishes to ask a question? Councillor Lemon?
That's me. Hello.
Yep. Hi.
Thank you for coming in.
That's all right.
Do you know, you've obviously observed this,
Yeah.
does Do those businesses not have parks for
They
their
do.
customers?
Yeah, they do. So whoever did the feasibility on the parking ratio, it's a three-tiered structure. You probably know the one. I'm sure it's in excess of what of the employees that can actually park there. It can be the only reason they tend to park all up and down the street.
And how far up the street do they go?
I noticed lately they'll be going up east of, well east of Scott and well east of Kitchener.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Cornish.
Thanks for coming in and providing your deputation. Just wondering what sort of effect has it had on your family life, the changes that have occurred?
Well, we moved there 20 years ago, and there was obviously the traffic flow has changed a bit, and there was no restriction on parking. I think we're allowed 3 permits. Now, because we've got supposedly access to 2 off street, we're allowed 1. So the problem is trying to pull up at any time of the day. There's just absolutely no way you can get near your household. So often we have to park virtually up around the shops, which are halfway up, to get even near the household. And I'm sure it's happened to others. I've seen a guy who's agitating quite a bit on one of the corners about who's parking where and why. I mean, a simple solution would be just to give those cars a parking ticket, seeing most of them are there all day long.
Just on that, and you sort of did answer it as I just after I pressed the button, I suppose. But just to clarify, the main issue, I mean, all streets have different issues. But Dulwich Avenue, you're saying that it's an issue that there is no, even if you had the permits, you haven't got the permits, and I understand that is an issue that did change.
One.
That's
and the
one.
permits have changed from somewhat 3,800 down to 600.
Yeah. Your issue is largely though that even if you did have them,
you wouldn't get near.
You wouldn't get near
your
anyway,
house. Yeah.
Because we're okay. Yeah, I understand. Do you see any evidence of enforcement of the
No.
rules? No.
I mean, I can count some cars are there all day long.
Yeah.
And I watch them, and they do go into those premises down the end, the businesses.
Yep. Yeah. That's useful. Thank you.
If there are no further questions, thank you very much,
That's
Mr.
right.
Whitford,
Thank
for
you.
coming. And now I call upon Mr. Darryl Watson. So you heard what I said before, Mr. Watson, 5 minutes with a warning bell at 4. Thank you.
Thanks very much for the chance to speak to you. I'm speaking against the parking policy. I think it's a bad policy. I think the information council has in front of them is wrong as the lead-off. So there's significant risk to this policy. I live in Toorak Gardens, proximate to the Burnside Hospital. We've only had parking restrictions there since we entered into an informal arrangement with the hospital and with the council last decade after the hospital wanted to expand and the like. Presumably, most of you don't know that the hospital is actually in breach of the deed from Otto van Rieben, a late resident near where I live, in the use of that property. The council and the hospital recognised that some years ago, and on behalf of all parties, the hospital's been redeveloped with more parking. The hospital's moved across into residential zoned areas, and the parking restrictions have been put in place. Nobody was 100% happy, but it was a good accommodation. Now the council has interfered with that by stopping me and other people from having permits at any price. So there's a significant risk if you don't change this policy. We'll be left with no choice, which we don't want to do, of requiring the hospital to operate in terms of the original deed, which will have a major impact. I presume that may also have an impact on the CEO's performance indicators. Secondly, where I live is a high rate area. Part of the reason why it's a high rate area is because I've got a significant amount of land, some of which I devote to potential for car parking and other uses. So it's interesting, because I choose to do that with my high rateable lands, I'm treated less well than other ratepayers in Burnside. Doesn't seem to be fair to me or my neighbours. Finally, the system you put in place just seems to be really inefficient. You have to collect payments, you have to assess applications, you have to process them, you have to argue with people like me, and all of that for the grand collection sum of $8,455. You just need to go back to the old system where residents had access to permits. If you need to do that in various places differently, well, that's up to you. I wouldn't know about that. But where I live, if you continue with this, the residents will be left with no choice but to revisit the situation we had with the hospital some years ago, which led to us having restricted parking in my street.
Any questions, please?
Yep.
Councillor Pickett.
Thanks for coming in. I just wanted to clarify your individual situation. You've obviously been assessed. How many permits would you like?
Well, I had 3 permits under the last system.
Yep.
I don't understand why I'm not able to have 3 permits under this system.
How many are you able to have?
So I have 1 permit.
One that you've been.
So the council, the council has sent someone around to count how I use the square meterage that the council rates.
Yeah, that's I understand. So I was just wanted to clarify.
Doesn't sound very efficient.
Exactly how far we were from getting you right. Thanks. 2 passes. What's that? Thanks.
Councillor Cornish.
Thanks for coming in. Just a quick question. You did say under the previous system you had 3 permits. Were you using all 3 at the same time out in the street, or was it off and on? Could you explain how you actually utilise the permits?
So I thank you for your question and your advocacy on this topic. We have cars that we attach the permits to. Invariably they weren't on the street. Occasionally they were on the street. Sometimes they were on the street longer than the time there. So myself, my neighbours, we don't use those spaces just for the heck of it, but often it's quite convenient to have a car and not have to worry about going to take it off the street and face a fine. So no, these aren't cars that are parked out there all the time. It's a convenience issue, a convenience which I think we pay for.
Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in. I'd just like to ask you a few questions about the hospital and how it's using the space, and a couple of questions. When you say it's a hospital issue, is this visitors? Is this staff? What is the issue in terms of the people that are on the street?
So the hospital's a busy business. The hospital's expanded into residential land to increase its parking. The hospital's been redeveloped and had increased parking there. The hospital uses part of the grounds outside of the conditions allowed for in the deed, unlike the oval issue where the deed has been lost in time. This one hasn't been, so it's pretty straightforward from that point of view. So they're high turnover consulting facilities with lots of traffic and lots of parking, and not so much for the visitor parking. But there's an increased parking from the time that we had the problem with the hospital. That's good, but that still spills over, and we don't think it should dominate where we live the way that it currently does.
So is, in effect, what you said is these are patients going to consulting rooms that are parking on your street?
So the part of the deed that's in breach relates to ambulatory healthcare, not inpatient healthcare.
So I just want to get clear, who's parking on your street? Are these people?
Well, I don't know who the people are parking on the street. All I can tell you, it's no longer me, because you've taken away my permits. So I'm the one paying rates. I'm the one supporting the amenity. But I don't have the ability to park there like I used to. And the reason why I've got restrictions on parking there is because of the hospital's change in practice from the intention of the deed. me and the neighbours I've spoken to don't want to pick a fight. We certainly don't want the council to have to get in there and pay legal fees. I understand you're experts in that. We just want to revert to the system that existed a year ago.
And I have another question. Is this 24 hours a day, or is it mainly during office hours? Is there time when your street doesn't have strangers parking on it?
I don't think it's an issue so much about strangers parking on it, but the restriction in our street is a limited one across the Monday to Friday daylight hours.
Councillor Henschke.
Good evening. Now, it sounds like it's, I'm hearing lots of feedback from residents through the Rose Park Turret Gardens ward that I'm councillor for, and it's quite street by street specific issues. And tonight, thank you, I'm hearing about street specific issues in relation to the Burnside Hospital, which is good for us to hear. Thank you. So my question is, okay, you're now under the new system, you've got one permit. Before you had 3, so I presume you had 3 cars registered at your property, and you still have 3 cars?
I do, and where I live, lots of people have more than one car. Whether that's good or bad is a separate issue.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Yeah, exactly. And so, so my point is that, and I've had a theme recurring with others in the ward. So this could, your presence tonight helps us understand this. When you have one permit, what do you do with that permit when your wife or daughter wants to use a car and wants to put on the street? Do you have to go and physically get the permit out of one car, move it to another? How do you find that exercise?
I don't want to get into the gender-specific issues that you've raised, but the most important person in the house has that permit on her car.
Right.
And then the rest of us have to manoeuvre around that.
Mm-hmm.
So as I said earlier to Councillor Cornish, sometimes it's convenient to have the car for a relatively short period of time, or at least you're planning it that way to do that. Instead, we have to spend more time, more inconvenience doing that, which we didn't have to do a year ago, and we just don't understand why we have to do it now.
Thank you.
Councillor Carbone.
I've got a simple question for you. I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway, okay? And I think it summarises this whole debate. So it's your street, they're your cars, you'd like 3, you're given 1. Are you smart enough and educated enough and old enough to determine your own need in your street?
Well, modesty forbids me answering your whole question, but I can say that I'm certainly old enough to do that. And under the old system where there were lots of permits, people self-managed that really efficiently where I live. I just don't understand why governing authorities need to interfere with the people they govern making sensible decisions around these things.
Thank you very much. If there are no other questions, thank you for coming along.
You're welcome.
Right, there are no petitions. Questions on notice have been supplied, and there was an error in the first one, and you have been tabled with a second copy or a second document. This was in relation to residential rates, so if you find a loose sheet of paper on your desk, it's because Ms Reynolds has provided that to us as well. It is my intention with the leave of the meeting to move into question time now and move motions on notice until after the reports, as the reports are related to the interested parties who were seated in the gallery, and also we have a number of motions that were deferred from the last meeting that need to be, according to the regulations, dealt with first. So I'm going to move into public question time, and then we'll flow on directly into all reports after that. And we also have a guest this evening, the chair of our audit committee, who is also providing a report, and I'm going to move his report to the earliest, the first report on the agenda, so that he can deliver his report, and you have a written copy of it on your desk, and then he is free to leave as well. So we will move on now to...
Don't you need to seek leave of the meeting? I oppose changing the agenda. My understanding is you need to seek leave of the meeting.
I sought leave. I say...
Isn't it a vote?
Is it supposed to be a vote? All right, can I see a show of hands if you approve of me changing things? Okay, thank you. Then we will continue with it. All right, rules of question time. Thank you for participating in public question time. We have set aside 15 minutes for this agenda item. As you entered the chamber this evening, you have received, I believe, 3 cards for 3 questions. Please come forward when your number is called and sit in the deputy's chair to ask it. Please make sure that you do get to your question as quickly as possible and that it is clear that you have a question. You must state your name and the topic of your question before asking it through the mayor. You have 2 minutes. There will be no supplementary questions. An answer will be provided if it's possible, and then we'll move to the next question. If we do not get through all the questions tonight, well, we should do that, hopefully. I take this opportunity to remind all provisions relating to behaviour and conduct and the legislative requirements continue to apply for this item and throughout question time. If your question cannot be answered by administration, it will be taken on notice and acknowledged with an answer to be included in the public minutes and the question that was asked to be published in the minutes. I now ask the person with question 1 to come forward.
Good evening, Your Worship and elected members. My name is John Hartley of Glenosmond, and my question is concerning the Conningham Street Depot. At the last meeting of Council, the answer to questions about the Conningham Street Depot development stated that extensive community consultation had taken place, and can you please advise me firstly how many properties were advised of the planning application made to the State Planning Authority, and under what category we lodged the planning application? Secondly, how many how many properties of the... Two questions. I think you need to... Yes. We'll stop at that first. Stop at that, yeah. Okay. Now, I'm just seeking advice as to whether we can give you the answer tonight or whether we may need to put it in the minutes. Right.
We can't recall whether it was Category 2 or Category 3, so we'll have to take that on notice and provide it publicly.
And included with that some indication of the type of consultation and when it occurred. I think that was part of your question as well.
Yes, yes.
Yep.
Yes, thank you, yes.
All right. I think it would be informative for some of the elected members around who were not around at that time to know the answer to that question anyway. So it's not, it would be very worthwhile, I think, to attach that in our minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Hartley.
Thank you.
Question 2.
Good evening, Your Worship and elected members. My name is Peter Hartley of Glenosmond, and my subject is council debt management. Your Worship, like most of us who have been through times of 18% inflation and recession, I am concerned about the debt and my capacity to ensure that I can manage it. My question is in 3 parts. The first is, what is the current total projected debt of council and all its subsidiaries and joint undertakings including EHA, East Waste, Brownhill Creek and Era Water at the end of this financial year?
I consider that to be one question because it's different. They're all about the subsidiaries. So if we are able to have an answer from Mr. Cooper, or we can get back via the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, we'll have to take that question on notice because we'll have to refer back to the regional subsidiaries to get that information.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very much, Mr. Hartley. And our third question?
Thank you, Your Worship. I draw some attention to the inaccuracies once again in tonight's minutes, but I'll cover them at the end of my question, if I may. My name is Jim Jacobson of Freeville, and my question is regarding the responsibility of Australian citizens. Your Worship, when I attended the Australia Day citizenship ceremony on 26 January, each of the two groups gave a pledge which ended with the common words, "whose laws I will uphold and obey." These are the words that are defined as a requirement of citizenship under Schedule 1 of the Australian Citizenship Act 2007. All of us then gave the Australian citizenship affirmation at the end of the ceremony, and I think that includes everyone bar one in here. Those words again end with, "whose laws I uphold and obey." Now, as someone who has taken an earlier pledge as part of my naturalisation, I understand the word uphold means in a legal sense that a citizen has a responsibility to, quote, keep and defend a principle or law, according to the Cambridge Legal Dictionary. That is, that one of the responsibilities of citizenship is to not only to obey the law, but to ensure that my fellow citizens also obey and respect the laws which govern us all. As a federal requirement, it clearly supersedes all state legislation. At the last meeting of Council, I attempted through due process to draw to the meeting's attention through a point of order that the Council was about to break the law, in particular Section 86(8) of the Local Government Act. That was howled down by some elected members with claims that I had no right to call a point of order. It therefore begs the question, how are citizens of this city supposed to uphold the law in accordance with their federal statutory requirements of citizenship when clearly the Council appears to be intending to break the law or has broken it? You may wish to contact the Minister for Immigration to clarify what steps Australian citizens are expected to comply with to ensure that the laws which govern all of us are in fact upheld and obeyed, and how the citizens of this city, this state and this nation can best ensure that this occurs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. That was a very high-level philosophical question involving federal policy and federal government laws, and I think we're going to have to take that on notice.
I expected as much.
Thank you very much.
That's okay. If I
and
could
try
also
to give you an answer and a response via the minutes. Thank you, Mr.
That's fine. May I just draw the Council's attention to once again the fact they approved. I can't tell you that you broke the law again. Oh, okay. I won't tell you that you broke the law again with the minutes. Well, Henry, if you don't want to know, that's fine, mate. But I haven't broken the law, Councillor, and you would like to retract that count.
Discuss or
start. Ms. Davey. Otherwise, I'm happy to send my lawyers around to pay a visit to you. Would you like that? Because I'd be happy to do it.
And neither of any of you, please. This question is not involving us.
Unbelievable.
But it makes the situation...
Yeah, well, come on, be specific, Jane.
Let's follow our rules. Okay, I'm now going to move into go through the reports of officers. I'm going to call these and ask to find out who wishes to withdraw any or all of them for debate. I will go through and read them out, and then I will ask for Mr. Powell to come forward, and because I'm going to be moving that particular report right to the beginning. So, first of all, we don't need to withdraw for debate number 13.1 because we dealt with it at a special meeting. 13.2, Royal Avenue footpath. Councillor Dawes. Possible sites, 13.3, possible sites, Councillor Hughes. Verdict, please. It was almost simultaneous.
Too close to call.
And there was another one over there as well. That doesn't hold any, does that hold any credence? No. As to who pulled it last time? No, it doesn't hold any credence. Sorry? Oh, well, I saw Councillor Hughes first because she happened to just be closer. Okay, so Councillor Hughes. Next one is the CEO report. Councillor Piggott. Oh, sorry. Do we have to, the verbal report, we don't have to move that, withdraw that? Yeah. We do have to, sorry, I've missed one. 13.4, Who would like to withdraw the verbal report? Mr. David Powell. I can do that? Okay. Right, so I will do that one. 13.5, CEO's report, Councillor Piggott. The nominations, casual vacancies, 13.6. Councillor Piggott. Regional subsidiary, 13.7. No one. The review of the implementation of parking policy. How did I guess? Cornish. 13.9, bylaw management and enforcement. Councillor Davey. 3 Torrens Avenue, Erindale, 13.10. No one. Urban and community, 13.11. Streetscape policy. Councillor Davey. Right, so now we need to move back, and I can take this one first. Or do we have to go to do those other ones? The nuns, all right. All right, so we do 13.7, the regional subsidiary. I need a mover. Is that Councillor Cornish? Seconded Councillor Dawes. Is that a hand up or not? No, you have to withdraw the motion if you wish to ask a question.
You can after. You ask the administration after the meeting.
Yes, send a question to the administration or ask at the break time. No, not now, after. Okay, so Councillor Piggott had seconded the motion. Those in favour? Could you just hold your hand up for a moment longer? Those against? Carried. There seem to be some who did not vote. You must vote. If you are seated at the chair at this table, you must raise your hand either with a for or against. You cannot be, I don't know. You can't abstain. So I'm going to ask for that vote again. So those in favour, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right, and those against? Carried. Right, and the other one was 13.10, the 3 Torrens Avenue, Erindale. Thank you, Councillor Piggott. It's moved, Councillor Piggott, seconded Councillor Cornish. Those in favour? Those against? I think that was unanimous. Right, now I'm withdrawing 13.4. The verbal report from Mr. David Powell, who is the chairperson, for those of you who have not met Mr. Powell, he is the chairperson of the Audit Committee, and he is going to provide us with an annual report for committee activities and operations in 2018. Welcome, Mr. Powell.
I do. I'm good with them, thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and elected members, and as you know, I'm David Powell. I'm pleased to provide what is my second presiding member's report for the Audit Committee for the year ended 2018. We met on 5 occasions in 2018, and we consider a whole bunch of matters that are within the terms of reference of the committee. We review the 2017-18 general purpose financial statements. We met with the external auditors, Dean Newbury and partners, and discussed the matters arising from their audit, and they issued last year an unqualified audit opinion on both financial statements and internal controls. We resolved that we were satisfied with the financial statements, that they present fairly the state of affairs of the council for the year ended June 2018, and they were considered by the previous council on the 23rd of October last year. We also review the financial statements of the 4 regional subsidiaries, and certainly from the point of view of our committee, we'd like to acknowledge the work of the finance team in preparing accounts. There are a lot of work and often done very well. We consider quite a number of matters in that 12-month period that included aspects around the policies and particularly the protocols. What we do with the policies is reviewing that they are being updated on a regular basis. We also reviewed the draft annual business plan and budget for 18-19, the subsidiary financial results, the annual report and annual reports of the subsidiaries. We also look at the timetable and the process you plan for the 2019-20 budget, and also your involvement within the local government risk scheme, and that's a review of both the risks and the occupational health and safety aspects that are considered. We also cover off on matters around internal controls, so there's an internal financial control self-assessment that occurs. We also review the internal audit plan, and we did receive a report on mobile device management last year. In terms of the external audit, we deal directly with external auditors and we consider their management letters and actions that are undertaken by administration when considering those matters raised by external auditors. And we also assess the independence of the council auditor when it comes to producing financial statements. In 2018 was the first year where we instigated greater oversight of the financial performance and risk of the regional subsidiaries. It was something that we were discussed in the previous year where we didn't really feel we had visibility of the subsidiaries. So we've been inviting in the leadership, usually the CEO or equivalent of each of those subsidiaries. So we heard from Highbury Landfill Authority, Eastern Health Authority and Brownhill Creek, Keswick Creek Stormwater Project, and considered their key operations, risks and financial stability of those organisations. In terms of other aspects that we cover off on, there was an application for additional loan facility. We considered the financial delegation policy, the risk management policy, the tax policy, the light fleet management policy. We get reports on work health and safety and return to work. We looked at the long-term financial plan for Eastern Regional Alliance Water Authority. We reviewed the procurement policy and we consider the audit committee's plan and activities, and we also review the activities for the year. So it's quite an active committee. I certainly like to thank the former Mayor Parkin, Councillor Davis, and independent members Roberto Bria and Sean Chu for their valued contribution to the committee. And we did welcome Stephen Coates, who replaced Sean in October of last year. And I certainly look forward to working with the new elected members of the committee in 2019. I'd just like to thank you for serving the council in this way, and happy to take any questions if there are any.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you very much, David. I have great faith in your chairing of the Audit Committee and the work you do. I just have a question on how you see the Audit Committee's role, or if there is one, in oversighting environmental risks, which are key to our lifestyle, or our life at the moment.
Absolutely. That is certainly something that is gaining momentum amongst other local government audit committees that I'm dealing with. And there's no doubt that climate change is, particularly matters around climate change and how that affects the environmental aspects, is increasingly a risk that we are asking our administrations in various councils to consider in terms of their risk assessment, and particularly how they intend to manage those risks. So absolutely an increasing focus, and it is the kind of risk we would expect to see being managed within councils. Absolutely.
Councillor Dawes.
Hi.
G'day, David. Well, I didn't put my hand up before. I might be able to ask the question of you, David. I am concerned by the era water accounts. Right, another $800,000. It doesn't include the capitalisation of interest and so forth. That's regarded separately. From an auditor's perspective, are you worried by the fact that we haven't yet reached a situation where we're making money out of that, or is that beyond your scope?
Look, we've certainly been challenging the subsidiaries to ensure that they have improved financial performance. Era Water is one of those that would be high on the watch list, I think, from our audit committee's perspective. Ultimately, it will come down to, in that particular situation, it will be to do, there'll be a number of factors. One will be the engineering aspects of what they're doing that would need to, in terms of progress on the capital spend that they're doing there, but also other factors such as water availability, etc. So there's a bunch of factors that are being considered in that area. and it is one that we would expect to hear from Era Water again in the near future about how they're looking to manage that. Obviously, we don't get down to the level of actually how are they managing the Era Water subsidiary as such. We'd be looking for the management to deliver on their plans effectively.
Councillor Henschke.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hello, David. Also on Era Water, thank you, Councillor Dawes. I've got a question. Is it within the scope of the audit, external audit or perhaps internal audit, to do an audit of the project, a project audit against the business case that was approved? It's just to give council confidence in future investment. Thank you.
Sure. It would be something we could consider adding to an audit plan. I'm just trying to recall who the external auditor is on that one. I'm not sure. I don't know if it is Newbury as well, because they're not the...
Oh, sorry.
I'm not sure it is.
No, it's not. It is. I thought it was...
It is Newbury?
It is Dean. Sorry,
Okay,
it is Dean Newbury who is
because I'm thinking on some of our subsidiaries, it's not all Dean Newbury, so I just couldn't remember off the top of my head which one it was. Look, Dean Newbury's would be responsible as the external auditors on the financial statements aspect. You know, do the financial statements represent the financial situation? But the issue you're really asking about is the project delivering to its expected plan, and that would be a different, by its nature, would be a different audit. It could be, I think, particularly with Era Water, there's an engineering aspect to this that's a fairly important part of it as well. So it's not just a financial audit as such. So it would be something we could consider incorporating into the plan as a management request or a request from the elected body. To actually say, is this something we should consider in the audit plan, and then consider how that's best resourced and what the nature of the audit. So I think it's possibly more than just a financial audit, but probably the whole delivery of that particular project. So happy to see if we can incorporate that as we have a meeting next Monday night, so we can raise that back through this mechanism.
Just for your information, Councillor, gosh, the name's gone, Henschke. Councillor Henschke is the elected member who will be on the audit committee, so you've got a chance to actually meet her.
Sorry, that's excellent.
Anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Piggott.
I had a couple, if I could. East Waste is not on the list of presentations. Was there a reason for that?
I don't think we had I don't believe we had East Waste last year, or did we? Did I miss that?
It's just the list.
From my report?
Okay.
Sorry, Mark.
Recall we had the China sword issue that was discussed quite extensively, so I think it's just an omission.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Great.
That was
the China sword issue, indeed.
No, we did actually hear from them. My apologies, I probably missed that when I went back through the minutes to...
East Waste is the glamour subsidiary, David, you should know that. The other one was that we passed a change to the terms of reference for the audit committee last meeting to when a vacancy lands, to actually have 2 elected members and the mayor on the committee. I'm not sure.
I had heard...
Been told that?
I had heard rumblings of that, yes.
Right, rumblings. Well, they are more than rumblings. We passed it last meeting, so that's what will happen.
Right.
Oh, yes, sorry. Councillor Jones is our other talented elected member who we want to put on the audit committee. What that does is change the balance, obviously, of independents and elected members. And I just was... I guess keen for your reassurance, perhaps, that how you'd operate as a chair to make sure that's still meant for a good audit committee.
Yes, fine. I actually chair I chair 4 audit committees in local government and several others outside of local government, and they are a mix of more or less independence. One of them has 2 independents and 3 elected members. Another one has 3 independents and 2 elected members. So, of course, both can work, and the only potential challenge would be if for some reason, and I've never seen it happen in the 10 years I've had that situation, where the elected members might work together to overrule things, but I've never seen it happen. So I think it's about a matter of chairing a meeting so that we get to a reasonable resolution on any matter. So I don't think it's an issue. It can be managed either way. I think there's schools of thought either way, and both can work. So I'm happy to work if that's what the Chamber's asking for. We can make that work. Grant?
Thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, it's probably following on for that. My concern of having more elected members on the audit committee is that it would remove the independence of the audit committee and would allow for elected members to push their own agendas. For example, say they wanted more debt or less debt. How do you feel about that as the chair? Would you be able to manage those types of pushes?
I think I alluded to that as being a possibility, and I think you need to acknowledge that is one. I think there's I think it then comes back down to again chairing the situation. I mean, the reality is normally the chair doesn't move or second any matters. Obviously, would vote when required or resolve matters. If I thought that there was if I had a issue of my professional integrity because I thought I was being steamrolled by elected members, and I thought that there was a serious implication to Burnside Council or its financial statements or whatever as a result, I would certainly would have to see that through to its conclusion, whatever that might be. So if I thought there was a serious problem with that, I think I would imagine there'd be mechanisms to bring that back to the chamber. But I don't expect, as I said, I've been in a situation with less independence and have never had that situation occur in 10 years on one particular council I'm involved with. So if it were to occur, I think you just manage it as best you can, either on the night and then resolve it over time. But there's also an ability to, if I was particularly concerned, obviously you'd minute that as well about those concerns. So there's ways to deal with it.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. That's a very good answer. Can I ask Councillor Jones?
David, the council obviously provides a number of essential services. How would you assess the council's preparedness to deal with a cyber attack from, say, a hostile foreign power?
Wow. I'm not sure the last cyber security assessment that was done within council would probably be something we would have to get a recent report on our cyber security. I can't recall one in the 2 years. Martin, can you answer that? In the last 2 years of audit committee that we've got an IT cyber security assessment?
Can I ask Mr. Spearman might be the best person to
Sure.
answer that question? Mr. Spearman, would you mind?
Oh, yes. Do you want to join me?
Thank you.
I'll turn this on.
Through the Mayor, there was, we typically do one every year. We've just got results back from our most recent one, which was done by the LGA in basically December. So but we do have a program to do it each year.
So as a result, we might see if we can ask for those sort of reports to come to the audit committee. that's possible.
And through the mayor, yes, that's possible. We have to redact certain features because it's got things like IP addresses, certain login details, and it shows our weaknesses, which you don't exactly want to publicise.
Can I ask, are you wanting that for the next meeting, or are you happy to have it for the meeting? Because it's next Monday.
It won't be ready
happy for the meeting after that?
Next meeting, but we may also see if we can get a... of course. We used to work together, so it's all right. So we may be able to... we also may be able to ask for perhaps a summary of that report as well, that would not necessarily need to be a full detailed report. But
we can deal with that on Monday's meeting.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? If there are no other questions, could I please have someone move to accept the verbal report? Councillor Davey, seconder. Councillor Cornish. Those who are in favour, please raise your hands. Unanimous? No, not unanimous. Against? Oh, was it unanimous? I didn't see Councillor Davis's hand up. I apologise, it must have been awfully fast. Okay, all right, so that was unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to Mr Powell for coming along and giving us a report. All right, now we move to the next one, which I believe is Royal Avenue, and that's Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Mayor. This particular footpath proposal is in the ward that Jenny and I represent, Councillor Timber and I represent. So I thought it was appropriate that that we would speak to it. So do I move the motion first? So the motion is, as on page 54, number 1, that the report be received, that the following recommendations from the Tonkin Consulting Road Safety Audit Report be further investigated, reduction of speed through vehicles along Royal Avenue, either prior to or at the intersection, provision of a stop sign at the Queen's Avenue approach, extending no parking restrictions further north and on both sides of the southern Royal Avenue approach, and vegetation pruning removal to improve sight lines. That a footpath, gravel or rubberised permeable softwall be installed alongside number 1 Nelson Street and number 9 Royal Avenue, with a formal crossing provided on Nelson Court, but with one amendment. And the amendment is, and I know that Councillor Pickett's very good at amendments, so he might want to change this, but this is what I'm thinking of here, is that the number 3, and it's a thorough report. It really is a thorough report, and I do congratulate Michelle and her staff on the thoroughness of the report, including photos, but we haven't consulted with residents on this particular option. And so my, I guess the 4th point is that this option should be shared with residents prior to formal approval by council, or something of that ilk. I'm just a bit worried that we think this is great, and on face value, as I said to Michelle over the email, I think it looks good, but I just don't know whether it is the final solution or not. This has been going on for a couple of years.
I understand, just a question, I understand that you want this to come back to full council for a final decision, or do you just want them to be informed of the decision?
Well, I think the way I see it is that the council approve it subject to consultation with the residents.
No, it can't work that way. We have to, well, can it? Can? I'm sorry, I'm corrected. All right, would you like to explain this one for us all?
Is that the point of what
no,
the point I'm making there is that if the residents agree this is the last solution, because we've been going for this for 18 months, 2 years, whatever it is, then it doesn't need to come back to council. It can go ahead.
All right. I'll ask Mr Cant to respond to that.
Through your worship, one of the reasons we're in this situation is because we failed to get agreement from the majority of the residents on this street and nearby surroundings. If we consulted in accordance with the policy, we would just consult with those residents who the footpath would proceed in front of. And the policy provides a percentage of responses that would be required for us to proceed. So if you wanted to proceed in accordance with the policy, we could do that, and then we can make that decision. But it may not be a unanimous or unilateral acceptance by the residents that you're seeking.
Still wanted that to go, yeah.
Okay, so you want to put that, are you happy with number 4?
Well, I was trying to get to the stage that I'm happy for this to go ahead, provided that the residents who are involved with this agree with this option. So it's probably a little bit of a change there. I don't want it to come back to this council if it's agreed with the residents.
Through the Mayor, as Barry has said, given the consultations that we've undertaken to date, it's unlikely that we will get any unanimous agreement by the residents who are going to be consulted by this. So we can certainly go to consultation on this proposal and then bring back the results, and then the council can determine, based on the results, whether it wishes to proceed with this or any other variation of this proposal.
Can I just, I think...
I'm not looking for unanimous, I'm just looking for a majority agreement.
But I think what Mr Cant and Mr Dev said is that there is a very limited, in terms of the consultations, a very limited scope that they actually extend to in terms of the residents they consult with. Am I correct? Is that what you mean?
That's correct.
So it's not very broad, it's quite narrow.
And it's 50% of those who we consult with, more than 50% plus, that have to agree to the proposal. So it's entirely up to council as to whether we bring it back to the council for final decision, or whether you say that in accordance with the consultation policy, if the results of that consultation indicate that the majority of residents support the proposal, then it doesn't need to come back to council.
I would like what you said last, is what I'm saying.
I wish I could remember what I just said last.
Yeah. I don't know where Rob got that, but yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's what you want.
Yeah.
I have a question.
We can't have a question until we have a seconder and until we have this motion complete. I'm going to ask Ms Kennedy to explain the situation so that it is clear to Councillor Dawes that that he understands where this is going to go before you finalise this motion.
Thank you. Through the chair, we've done 2 rounds of consultation on this proposal for a footpath. Now, granted, that was a slightly longer extent of a footpath than what we're proposing in this recommendation. What we found through both of those was that we had a group of people who lived just outside of the area who were quite supportive of having a footpath installed, and we had the majority of residents along that stretch who did not want a footpath installed. And because it was that diametrically opposed view, that's where we ended up with some issues. And certainly one of the issues that was raised was around road safety. And so it came down to a question around, do you prioritise the wants of the residents or the road safety aspect? And that's the recommendation we came up with, was something that took into account both of those factors. If we were to go back and consult again, it would be a question about whether we consult with those residents that are directly affected, which would be maybe 3 properties. So it would be the 2 that the footpath would run alongside and the 1 across the road, which is in line with our footpath policy. Or do we go back and consult more broadly with the whole street and potentially the people that did the deputation as well? I suspect we'll end up with the same results again. And while it might be nice if we ended up with everyone saying, yes, we're happy with that, it's easy to go forward. If we end up with not everyone happy with that, this decision still needs to be made by council as to where we go.
If I go to page 59, and if you look at the map there, I'd say that all those who've got a red outline of their boundaries would be the ones that I would pick, because they're the ones that would be affected. So you've got number 1, Nelson, and you've got 9, 11, 13, 15, 17, 19, 21. On the other side, you've got numbers 16, Queens, and 9, 10, 14, and 16. I can't read it from here, but they're the ones who are directly affected, I would have thought.
Right, so we can, I've just found out we can do that. That is not what the policy states, but if this direction comes from this council, that's where you want the who you want to consult with, then that can be part of your motion.
Yes, and the reason I'm saying that, if I can just say the reason I'm saying that is because I don't know, on face value it looks to be the solution, but I don't know. I've been there, I'm sure other councillors have been there. It's typical of Burnside. We've got narrow streets, we've got verges which are too narrow to be used for footpaths. This is a very difficult area. There's traffic mitigation as well involved, which I think is great. I mean, that would also perhaps turn the tide. And I do understand what Michelle was saying, because she's worried we're going to get a negative response again. But I think if they understand the amount of work that's gone into this, that I believe that the residents will be supportive that we are seeking their opinion. So
why don't we just do 1 and 9? They're the ones directly affected.
I just suggested in number 4 that this option should be shared with residents not in accordance with our footpath policy, but in accordance with those residents marked in point 28 in this map located here.
Yes.
That's what you're saying, isn't it?
Because a footpath has been put in front of number 18 on, so we've done that, but we couldn't get agreement from number 1 through to number 21. Didn't know which side the footpath would be on. And that's where we've had disagreement, and we've had people change their mind. Petitions have been put forward to this council and so forth. So I understand the frustrations of Michelle and her staff, but I still don't know if this is the right solution. I think it is, on face value. But
Paul's working on number 3.
I haven't got a seconder yet, by the way. So.
No, we have to get this finished first, and then I'll get a seconder. They can't second something that they don't know what they're seconding.
Harvey is right that number 1 and 9 are directly affected by the footpath, but it's more than just the footpath. It's the traffic mitigation, there's a stop sign involved as well, etc., etc.
I think they've done the stop sign already.
Stop sign, yeah. Stop sign, yeah.
Through the chair, just for reference, since this report was written, the stop sign has been installed and the parking restrictions have been addressed as well. So those two are now been completed.
So we should take out 2.2. Yeah, but we haven't. But we haven't had a motion about it. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah.
Can we remove 2.2 and 2.3? Because if they have already been done, there's no point in continuing to investigate. So is that now correct? Ms Kennedy first, because you know what action has happened, what the council has done. No, but I need to make sure that that work has been done, and Councillor Dawes may not be aware of that. Councillor Dawes, are you happy with that?
I'm happy with that.
Do you want those stop signs, the previous two clauses put back in?
Yeah, I'm happy with that, to take those out. I just had to be in there because it was a formal resolution.
Yes.
So happy to
happy with it as it is now?
Yeah, so number 4 reads that the results of the consultation be provided to council for consideration.
Right. Now you're happy with that? Now I can ask for a seconder. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Turnbull?
And I'd also like to add that it seems to be a very intelligent solution to this problem. And I'm really happy that the stop sign's there because I nearly got cleaned up when I was investigating it. So, thank you.
Well, that's good. All right. Any discussion, please? Oh, Councillor Piggott, sorry.
Yeah, I would. Look, I don't have an amendment because it wouldn't qualify. But if I could talk to it, I think actually we should. This is what makes local government so tough. It really is. Our administration have done several lots of consultation. We've received a petition. We've sent it back to be reviewed. We've got people who went against the footpath first, signed the petition for the footpath, and then went against the footpath. I mean, it really is quite tough to actually get something that'll please everybody. And we're looking at a street that is actually not a high volume street in either vehicles or pedestrian traffic, as I'd see it. And what has happened is that administration have come up with a really good option. They've considered all that. In actual fact, the other thing we did was, of course, spend money on an independent traffic management consultant. So in actual fact, the amendment I was looking to run was actually the motion as recommended talked about investigating further those 4 things. My view is that we should just do them, and that is still my view. We've actually got the mover and the seconder saying that they actually think this is a pretty good option. I do see the sentiment in terms of going back to the residents, but we've done a lot of this. I think they're probably bored with it in actual fact. What we're looking now is to actually prune the vegetation around that corner, which actually I feel probably should happen anyway, irrespective of consultation, and put in a small footpath around in front of those two, which I do understand those 2 residents were going to be consulted in regard to which result we would have, which sort of footpath we have. So I don't think we should vote this up in its current form. I think what we should do is vote it down, and then I think we should put an alternative motion up that actually finishes this, that actually gets it done. It sets our team off to talk to 1 Nelson Court and number 9 Royal Avenue in terms of which of those footpaths, and there's a 13 grand differential between those 2. Actually, I wouldn't mind going for the cheaper one, but I think asking those 2 and consulting them and getting those into that conversation, I think that's the right thing to do. The vegetation pruning, the reduction of speed, I'm not convinced about, but I think we should actually not vote this up, vote against it, and I'd put an alternative motion that set loose the vegetation pruning, no other consultation, let's get it done tomorrow, and gets our staff going and talking to those two on the corner about the footpath that we're going to put in, what's it going to be, get it done, get it decided and get it done. I think to extend the pain almost, to go back again, to get what will be another mixed result based on what we've had so far is a mistake. Well intended, but a mistake. I think we should vote this down and put one up that actually gets this done. I'd seek your support on doing that.
Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to ask a question, but now I'm not sure where have you sought an amendment yet? No, not yet. Okay. Okay, right, thank you. Okay, all right. Now, I noted in the report that it was first budgeted for in the 16-17 capital plan, the need for a footpath. And my question is, why was there a bid for a footpath back in 2016-17, please?
Through the Chair, we have a ongoing program for new footpath installations each year.
Yep.
So our current footpath policy says that where a footpath is viable, we'll undertake consultation with the people that reside in that segment of street. And if more than 50% support it, then we'll put it in, and if they don't, we won't. That's in a nutshell what it says. So we will flag potential viable footpaths, and they're prioritised in line with our footpath policy. And this was one of those, so it was flagged as a potentially viable footpath. It went through the consultation process. At the time, it was consulted in two segments. So there was the segment from number 18 up, and then this segment that we're talking about now. Only one of those was supported and one of those went in, so that was the segment from approximately number 18 up around to Eiffel Drive.
Thank you. So then we found that we did a safety audit and it's road audit, and found that the problem is an intersection safety problem as well around there. And the safety report written by Tonkins on page 75 says that the pavement bars are missing from the intersection. So will those pavement bars be replaced to improve the safety of the intersection? And there was a tripping hazard as well, which is minor.
Through the Chair, yes. Effectively, this resolution was to follow up on the findings of that audit report. We summarised the key ones in the recommendation, but the minor maintenance ones we'll follow up on as well.
Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Mayor Monso. I do have a question, if I could, in regards to the original catchment area. Were they of the understanding that this report was coming to council with this recommendation? Were they aware of the Tonkin report and its recommendations?
Through the Chair, the catchment for the footpath consultation wouldn't have been aware that this was coming to council. However, we did write to the people that lodged the deputation to let them know it was being considered at this meeting.
Councillor Davis.
I agree that we should. So we have the Tonkins report where there's identified safety concerns. We've done a number of consultations, and this is the outcome. I don't think that we should do further investigation, and we have enough information to make a decision. Therefore, I'll be voting against this motion, and I believe that Councillor Piggott will put an alternative motion to actually proceed with it. And I understand that you're never going to get 100% of people liking what you do, ever. However, we've tried that, we've gone out, and I think this is the decision, this is the option that we're lumped with, and we have a responsibility to make sure that we implement those changes and don't let them continue on. So I don't want to see this dragged out for however many more months as we go back to consultation, then come back to council, and then more complaints and everything like that. It needs to be done, and we should do it tonight. We have all the information that we need.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Yes, while I certainly understand Councillor Dawes' sentiments, I can't support this motion. I agree that a huge amount of work's been undertaken, consultation with the residents, and the fact that it's not clearly resolved indicates, I mean, it's a really non-traditional area for footpaths. It's very difficult. It's not a linear, equidistant road. It's got lots of different unique characteristics, and I actually don't see the need for additional footpaths there. The pedestrian levels are low. The biggest problem is that the traffic control measures and the reduction of speed and stop sign is more important, because the day I went up there to have a look, there were cars whizzing around everywhere. It might have been because it was the school holidays, but that was by far the greater risk that I saw. So I think traffic speed reduction is important. I think the trees and the verges have evolved into the current configurations over many years. People have built, all those residents have built their homes and gardens around this, and so they live with it, and it's part of the unique characteristic of the area. So I'd be happy if we just controlled the traffic a bit better and made that a bit safer.
Right, there are no further comments to be made. Oh, Councillor.
I'm going to support this motion. I don't think it will kill us to ask the question once again. It's been 2 years, a couple of months extra. I think people in the Burnside Council area are sick and tired of not being consulted about things. And God, just wait till we get to the parking policy debate, if we ever get to it tonight. Talking about non-consultation with residents that they're absolutely fuming about. And, you know, I'm in Beaumont and my inbox is full. So I'm going to vote for you, Mike.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Councillor Henschke, you asked a question, but you haven't spoken, so...
Yeah, I support this amended motion, and I think we've spent enough money, as I've heard already, on this project, and it's good that the safety issues have been brought to light, even though it was a footpath project to start. It's now a safety project. I would, you know, if we can nimbly have more consultation, whether it's just the project manager walking from door to door to meet the people, having a low-cost consultation process for the next step, then it's worthwhile to proceed. Thank you.
Councillor Davis, do you have a question?
Yep. How many times has the administration heard from the residents in terms of a petition, gone out for formal consultation, or notified residents in relation to this matter?
Through the chair, we've had one formal deputation that I'm aware of, one petition, 2 rounds of formal consultation, and a raft of informal communications with various interested parties, be they residents or people that live in the broader area.
Do you think there's any lack of consultation and awareness of the problems in this issue? Like, does the administration believe that formal consultation, as proposed here, is required to progress this in terms of a local government act perspective?
I don't think I don't think that you should be requiring Ms Kennedy to answer that question. It's quite a philosophical question rather than something that is supported by data.
Have we ticked off all the requirements that we need to do in terms of consultation with the residents?
Through the Mayor, we've made a professional recommendation in the report, and that's our position.
Right, is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Otherwise, I will go back to Councillor Dawes for him to sum up.
I hope I don't get the bell. I haven't had the bell yet. But, I just think we need to get it right. That's the point I'm making. I believe the administration has come up with a very good option. Again, I congratulate Michelle and the team for this. The road safety audit does talk about a reduction of speed being a recommendation. Councillor Pickett, so I think we should keep that in there. Not even this council, by looking at the past history, has kept to the same opinion on the same issue. It has changed its mind even within 12 months. That might happen with a parking policy, I'm not sure. But it's a difficult issue. I do understand that, and because it's a difficult issue, it means it's a difficult issue for the residents as well. So I just want us to listen to the residents for one final time, and I think they appreciate the opportunity of council coming up with a solution they hadn't thought of. I'm only looking for not looking for 100%, I'm looking for a majority view. And I think this is the first time that this new council can say, right, we think we've found a solution. Residents, one last time, and I think you'll find that it will be okay. But that's what I believe.
Thank you. Those who are in favour of the motion as it stands, please raise your hand. And those who are against? Right, the motion is to the CEO report. Wait a minute, no we don't. No, we've missed the matter of the wheel park. That was moved by Councillor Hughes.
What page are we on?
Oh, sorry, it's page 93.
Okay, I move that the report be received, that the council commences community consultation on each of the following 4 possible wheel park locations within the city of Burnside: JB Ware Reserve, Kensington Gardens Reserve, Miller Reserve and Penfold Park, specifically for gauging community sentiment on potentially having such a facility at one of these locations. That a report be presented to council with the results of the community consultation and proposed next steps. So I believe that this motion gives our community to have an opportunity to have their say and to shape the future of our city. I think this is an important decision to actually go to the community and gauge a level of interest about the location and whether there is a demand there to implement the project, which has obviously been trying to get some traction over the last 10 years. Although I appreciate that considering 4 sites may add additional costs to the community consultation process, I see that casting the net a tiny bit wider will provide us with an opportunity to maximise the potential for the City of Burnside to find a suitable site for a wheel park. I understand from speaking to the administration that approximately $40,000 has been allocated for consultation at all 4 sites, and then $30,000 to provide a concept for a preferred site. So the report provided by the administration clearly highlights the future predictions of our local community's population. The ages of 5 to 17-year-olds will make up 17% of our population, and Burnside, our City of Burnside, will have the highest number or proportion number of residents in the category of 5 to 17 years, which has been shown to be the biggest user groups of wheel parks. There are many underlying benefits to creating spaces that allow our youth, but also older members of the community to get outside, exercise, socialise in a safe environment. Community survey results show that creating opportunities for physical activity is an important issue for our community. The social benefits of creating a safe environment for young people and older people to exercise will also have a positive impact on the mental health of our community. This will provide an area for children and adults to exercise away from traffic and to provide a specific location away from car parks and other hazards. This will be a space that a wide number of users will be able to use, not just teenagers. It will provide an opportunity for grandparents caring for their grandchildren to get out and enjoy their wheels while not having to chase them down the street and watch for cars around driveways and street corners. So there may be debate tonight that there is no demand for a wheel park in Burnside. Well, did you know that there's actually a skate shop within our local community in the Burnside ward? So I would question that if there's no interest in these activities within our local community, then there certainly wouldn't be a business seeing the need to sell skateboards, scooters and roller skates. There's also things such as local skating classes, and these classes are not just for children. I found out that one of the oldest students in this skate school is in his 50s. So this is not just a young person sport, this is not just a young person issue, this is a community issue on the whole. So the decision tonight is about giving our whole community the right to get engaged and have their say. And as I've come up to speed as a new councillor, I've been reviewing our strategic community plan, and that document talks about the values for the City of Burnside to achieve the vision, the community's vision. It talks about the actions and decisions of council and also employees, and we should be guided by a set of fundamental and unifying values, which includes giving, having enthusiasm, the courage and support to implement something new, and the opportunity to challenge current practice. So this strategic community plan for our vision talks about creating public spaces that meet the needs of our community and provide a vibrant, current and inspirational opportunities to engage participation. Our strategy is about maintaining the diversity and beauty of our community, but also listening to our community and being willing to try something different. So this really needs to go back to our community to let them have their say. There's not a single representative of the report states that the main users will be between the age of 5 to, I think, 25. There is not a single representative in this room who is under the age of 25. So I think that as an elected body, although we're empowered to make decisions for our community as a whole, that is quite often a group that we don't perhaps make connections with very easily. So I think we should go to the community and ask the question. Thank you.
I see Councillor Carbone's name. Are you wishing to second it? Right, so wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Hughes, for moving this motion. I understand it has potential to be very political, perhaps even more political than the car parking issue, but that's all right. But look, councillors, seriously, how long is this council going to pretend to care about our youth? We cater for every age group in Burnside. We have playgrounds for children, outdoor gyms for young adults, and loads of services for our more senior residents. So why do we discriminate against our youth? Are they less deserving of council services than any other age group in Burnside? Providing something for them to use, such as a wheel park, has been on the agenda for decades, not 10 years, decades. I remember discussing this with elected members back in 1999, when I was this age. And here we are 20 years later, and we still don't have something for this age group. 20 years of talking. I'm done talking, it's time for action. Unruly behaviour, loud music, ghetto blasters, gangs, all that stuff you sometimes hear about when it comes to wheel parks simply doesn't exist. While this may exist in the movies, in the streets of Harlem, it doesn't exist here in Burnside. We need to do everything we can to encourage a healthy, active lifestyle and get the youth of Burnside off the couch. This is what they want. This is what they demand. Obviously, the location has to be right. They've waited for decades. Let's be the council of action, not the council of another 20 years of talking.
Councillor Turnbull.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I agree with what Councillor Hughes and Councillor Carbone have said, because when we moved here as a family 19 years ago, my then teenage boys said, "This is a hole, what have we got to do? There's nothing here." And they went back to where we'd come from to go to the skate park. So I do understand that, and it's 20 years later. However, apart from that, there is, for me, I'd like to move an amendment, because the Kensington Gardens Reserve that's on the list is actually, it's not in the Kensington Garden Reserve Master Plan, and so that would be inconsistent to put it in. So I would like to remove Kensington Gardens Reserve from the list of 4.
It's the best one.
Might be, but it's not on the actual master plan. May I move another amendment too?
I'll ask our CEO to respond to that, because we believe that this is not an amendment.
Through the Mayor, because the original mover and seconder have specifically asked for that location to be included for consultation, removing that location isn't an amendment unless the mover and seconder wish to delete it.
Right, so...
If it means getting your vote.
I'm assuming, Councillor... I won't assume. Councillor Hughes, do you wish to remove any sites from your original motion? Sorry, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I'll have a second amendment. I'll try that one. That Burnside Council has discussions with the neighbouring councils, particularly in Norwood, Payneham, St Peters, to collaborate with the siting of the wheel park and sharing the costs of construction.
That could be added as a... Yes. I'm just checking. That could actually be added as an additional point to the original motion if you so desired and the seconder wished that to be included. Could I just ask you to repeat that, what your intent was, please?
Yes, the wording was that the Burnside Council has discussions with neighbouring councils, particularly Norwood, Payneham, St Peters, to collaborate with siting of the wheel park and sharing the costs of construction. There is a precedent set.
Just say neighbouring councils and leave it there.
I've just been advised it is an acceptable amendment, although it could be run later when the report comes back. That could be added when we're looking at potentially trying to fund the project, if it were to go ahead. So are the mover and seconder prepared to accept that as an addition, or would you rather stay with the original motion? Well, then it's your choice to accept it or not accept it.
Why not?
Yeah,
All right, so Councillor Turnbull, do you wish to continue? Because you can continue talking up to that now.
There is a precedent set here. When Burnside Council entered into the agreement with Unley Council in 1999, they spent $35,000 on Ridge Park, Myrtlebank, plus 50% of other costs. So the precedent was set before. The agreement concluded in 2000. Ongoing costs was paid, maintenance was paid by Unley Council, but it has been done before. And I know that the Burnside people can go and use that skate park. Other people can too. So working with another council has been done, and it's the best interest for the ratepayer as costs were shared. And if you can even write in perhaps about the maintenance and sharing that as well. So two of those positions are right on the boundaries of the Burnside Council. One is like JB Ware's right up the top near Ridge Park. The other one's Mellor Reserve, which is right near the Norwood Payneham St Peters Council. So surely there can be some collaboration.
Can I ask Mr. Schroeder? Now, I'm not sure if everyone, especially people at home who are viewing, would know that this is Mr. Aaron Schroeder and Ms. Kelly Burns, who both work in this area of council. Can I ask the question, have you had discussions with Norwood Payneham St Peters Council with regard to the development of a potential wheel park?
Through the chair, yes, we've had informal chats with some of the officers from the neighbouring councils. They've given us an indication of whether they're considering skate parks in their own areas at the moment. But yeah, so we've commenced. We've got, I guess, networks and relationships that we can continue to do this sort of thing with.
Thank you very much. I understand from the report that it's Norwood, Payneham, St Peters and Walkerville, and that's a bit too far away, are the only two local city councils that don't have a wheel park. All right, the next person to speak is Councillor Pickett.
Just to follow up on that, are they considering wheel parks?
Norwood isn't. So Norwood told us that they don't have a push for it at the moment, and the other neighbours, like Unley, do have one already.
So no. Yep. Okay. Look, this, I don't think this should progress as it is, at the risk of becoming a no-no penguin, Councillor Davis. Because I don't think it's the right way to go. I actually, Councillor Hughes actually, put an impassioned view as to why we perhaps should have a wheel park, and I don't disagree with that. I think Councillor Carbone pushed out a lot of rhetoric in actual fact that we do nothing for youth. I don't accept that. Do people under the age of 25 not use our parks, not use our tennis courts? We've got Glenunga Hub oversubscribed mainly because of young people wanting to use it. So I don't think it is a stick you can hit this council with that we neglect the youth of Burnside. I don't think that is something we need to race to put a symbol out there that says we are, all for the youth. And I think in regard to actually getting it forward, I think there's a couple of things in the report I have an issue with. One is the stated demand. I don't think the demand actually has been proven. I think there is something in the fact that no other council is looking at it. The report says we know what's happened with Adelaide. They've pulled one out. Campbelltown's got one up near Paradise Church, which are not looking to actually fix up, as I read it. So the mood is not strong in regard to this as being driven as a big deal by communities generally. And I think that's true in Burnside. I think the other thing is consultation is absolutely right, but I feel that if we progress this tonight, we will consult with 4 communities around each of those locations, one of which is, 2 of which are in my ward. I think the best of the 4 is in my ward, actually. But what we will get, I feel, is that consultation will largely probably be answered by people over the age of 25, and it will very much hone in on all the things that Councillor Carbone said, all the misunderstandings probably. It's already started. I've already received 2 emails in regard to this motion, in regard to Kensington Gardens Reserve. Councillor Turnbull herself wanted to pull it out. So you can see that's what's going to happen. I feel that the result of this will be consultation around 4 locations that will largely hit or will be responded to by the audience that is not necessarily going to use a wheel park, and will be largely negative and largely upsetting probably as well. I think it'll be quite controversial to the neighbours, at least some of them, and it won't get to the fact whether we need one or not, and it won't actually help necessarily. What happens when it comes back here is the one of the 4 that had the least resistance. Is that the place we put it? Where I think this argument should go is actually I think we should engage specifically with the schools that we have in our city, of high schools, secondary schools. We've got 4, 5. I actually think the work that should happen on this next is to talk specifically to those people in those schools that are between, 10 and 18, and actually talk to them about would they use a skate park. And if that came up resounding, then I think we choose the best spot for it, and then we go out and we sell it to the residents around that location. We tell them that the stuff that people have been peddling out about why you don't want a wheel park is actually largely not true. Tell them about how we're going to make sure it isn't true, and sell them on the concept that it is something that's wanted, it will be used, and it won't be a problem to the local neighbours. As it is now, I feel that we will go out to those 4 communities and we will get largely negative response in regard to it. So I feel even the people who want the wheel park, and Councillor Hughes and Councillor Carbone were impassioned about that, and I don't disagree with that, but I feel that this will actually put it back, not put it forward. I think this is not the way to go in regard to achieving this. And the fact we haven't done it for 20 years again is not a reason for doing it now. Perhaps there was a good reason over the last 20 years why we haven't done it. I don't think we need a knee-jerk reaction to respond to the fact this has been around for a while. It has, a long while. Or the fact that we supposedly don't do anything for youth. That's not a good reason for doing this. And if you want the wheel park, this consultation I don't think will give you a result that actually provides us a positive result, or B, meaningful information as to what we do next. So I think we should vote it down.
Councillor Lemon?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, and it gets back to our interaction with neighbouring councils. Through you, has Campbelltown been discussed? Have we had discussions with Campbelltown about their existing skate park, their preparedness to go into any sort of joint venture with us, or what their attitude to skate parks are? That's my first question.
Through your worship, not those specific questions, no. In preparation of this report, it was to determine the skate parks that were in other council facilities, and also look at the benefits and the issues that arise with those skate parks. But specifically, would they be willing to enter into an agreement or an arrangement, or determining the future of those specifics? We haven't asked those specific questions.
And a supplementary on that, so you didn't ask Campbelltown why they're actually letting theirs fall to rack and ruin? No, okay. My second question is, as part of this proposal, what you've got is you're saying you're going to go to a community consultation process before making a decision to proceed to development of concept design. In reading that, am I correct in assuming that whatever happens to this tonight, and however it goes anywhere, it's going to go away, go through a consultation process, and we're not going to see it again until that consultation process has been analysed by you, you've chosen a site, and you're going to come back with a chosen site and a concept design? Is that the right way of looking at this? Because that's how I'm reading it.
Through your worship, no, we would bring the results of the community consultation back to council for further direction.
So in terms of the $70,000 that you've allocated, not all $70,000 is going to go on the community consultation?
That's correct. In the report, it actually suggests if we include the question in the broader community survey, we would be unlikely to undertake the concept design development this financial year. And therefore, if council wish to proceed at that point, when we bring back the consultation, we'd more than likely need to carry forward that money.
I'll speak to the motion now, if I may. I'll speak to the motion now, if I may. I, to a degree, to a very large degree, I completely agree with what Councillor Piggott said. What we'll be doing, I fear, what we'll be doing here is going out to community consultation to areas we've identified as potential sites for a skate park, looking at the neighbours, and they're all going to say no. You can just see that that's what's going to happen, because they're all, for a start, people hate change, and we'll see that in a minute when we look at parking. They absolutely loathe any sort of change, and secondly, they will have, everybody's got some sense of the skateboard stuff, and whether it's American stuff or not is immaterial. Where they got it from, they have a preconceived idea. None of us are bias free, and I actually think that that's counterproductive to what we're trying to achieve here. I think that we can do community consultation in a very targeted and specific way to youth, and potentially to some of our youth groups that exist under the banner of this council in the first place, and then to actually look at the community survey. We have already asked this question in the community survey, whether the population of Burnside supports a skate park. And in general, they were kind of supportive, but it was just a question of, would you like a fried egg with that? Yes, please, and a pickle. So we need to be careful about the sorts of questions we're asking and how we're asking them to get what I would consider meaningful information back. And the meaningful information that we can get back and extrapolate to our population is the stuff we get back through our annual survey. That's the only place we will get meaningful, extrapolated, validated information back with properly asked questions. I think we can then take to that stakeholder engagement with young people between the ages of 10 and 18 about what they see as important. And we're making assumptions about what they see as important in terms of a skate park. They might actually like more basketball courts. They might like mini golf. I don't know this because we haven't asked them those questions. We've just said, would you like a skate park? Would you like a fried egg with that? We haven't done any of the sorts of things that we need to do in terms of actually providing to our young people the sorts of activities that they might like. 20 years ago, according to Councillor Carboni, we were talking about this. So we're talking about last century's activities. Let's look at this century's activities. Things might have changed. We need to ask people. And for that reason, I actually won't support this in this form. I think that we need to cast our net wider. We need to ask really, well, I won't support this at all because I think what will come back is a no-no and we're back to square one. I think we need to get administration to, we can have an alternative motion looking at doing more targeted consultation and getting some proper information back before we even go to identifying sites. So I won't support this.
I'd just like to raise the issue that both Councillor Piggott and Councillor Lemon have concerns about, and that is consultation with the potential users as opposed to the site locations. And I wonder if an amendment from somebody who hasn't spoken yet could be added to this motion to include a broader form of consultation, and in particular, perhaps through schools and or community survey and or whatever the council deems as an appropriate broader communication or consultation, because I think that actually might help both groups achieve their aims. But it would have to obviously be somebody who has not yet spoken. I'm getting shaken heads across here, but I had 60 kids in here yesterday who just about jumped off their seats when I mentioned the wheel park.
Am I allowed to speak?
Yes, now Councillor Davey.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. No,
it's Councillor
sorry, it is Councillor Henschke first. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Through the Mayor, some questions. The Youth Services surveys that Councillor Helga Lemon refers to as there was low satisfaction for youth services. What were the percentages of low satisfaction there, the breakdown between, there was a split, wasn't there, in your report?
What page is this on?
Page 93. Well, I'll take you quickly to it, perhaps, because I added it up, and I added up 60%. There was a 60-40 split, roughly, of youth after recreational facilities, workshops, courses, and sporting facilities. That was a 60%, and the other 40%, which is about 38%, we're interested in the wheel park. Now, I think my question is, in terms of strategic alternatives, what I see from the need is there is a need for a variety of alternatives, strategic alternatives to satisfy low satisfaction. Is the wheel park one of those strategic alternatives that this council would pursue?
I'll respond that yes, that's one of the options that council is considering. Council has also adopted the Connected Community Strategy that also will have an action plan and will have a look at a wide variety list of actions aimed at all demographics, including youth. Turning our attention to this report and why we've presented it, though, we're following council resolution and we're following council direction to actively engage with the skate park for Burnside Group as part of exploring suitable locations for a skate park within the city of Burnside. We've addressed council's direction and that's what we're providing to council.
My next question is, there are a variety of, now that we've chosen a strategic alternative, which is a skate park type wheels park, perhaps it's called, the options what options are there for a wheel park in terms of what size wheel park? Because the Adelaide City Council proposing to the Adelaide Parklands Authority a $4 million wheels park. I don't know what the total investment cost at this stage is for this wheels park. Can you give me a total investment cost at this budget stage, please?
Good evening, councillors. Just trying to find out how long you're on site for.
Until we finish.
I've just got a trip in a couple of different zones in the building. It's just so I can tell the monitoring company that's all.
We'll give the until 11:30.
11 p.m. 10:30.
Thanks, council.
Thank you.
Front page right there, Ben.
I thought he wanted to say. I thought he was going to comment on something.
Yeah, because
through your worship, as provided in paragraph 59 of the report, it's estimated the design and construction of a wheel park in one of these locations could vary quite greatly, between 500,000 to 1.5 million, depending on the size, site, topography and design features of the wheel park. These costs would need to be considered following the consultation results and then part of a recommended next steps to council, where we would identify the size and type of skate park or wheel park that would be potentially investigated further.
And what class estimate is that you're referring to, the 0.5 to 1.5 million project class estimate? Is it plus or minus 50% at this stage of the project? The total investment cost you're referring to is 0.5 to 1.5 million at this stage. And what is the class of that estimate? Is it a class, a budget estimate which could vary up to 50%?
Through your worship, this would be a capital project, and the cost of it would depend on the size and type of wheels park that council decided to proceed with. A 500,000 wheel park would be much smaller. A 1.5 million one would be the larger size of bowl type facility that you would find somewhere else. Every project would need to provide a contingency as part of that, and if council proceed to detailed design, a full cost estimate would be provided at that stage. We don't have that information at this stage.
Yes, at this stage it would be 0.5 million could become 1 million, 1.5 could become 3 million. Okay. So, thank you for answering those questions. And so I'd like to speak to the motion now. I can't support this motion as it stands. The cost of the project development with the level of engagement, I think, is far too great at this stage, like Councillor Lemon referred to. The level of community consultation to find a site is quite costly, and the project may not develop further. I would, however, support a small wheel park, if that could be an option presented to council, a wheel park with a total investment cost less than $1 million, because when we talk about wheel parks to experts in the Adelaide City Council, they do cost a lot of money. So whether or not this motion can be amended further to narrow it down so we can look at a small-scale wheel park, like a pilot, or something that the community can enjoy in a smaller scale, that's my question. And thank you.
Next one is Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I have a question first before I make comment. I'm fascinated with, I was the one who actually moved the motion to explore the opportunities for skate park. And I'm fascinated with how we've now become a wheel park and why that terminology is involved, because I did a bit of a Google. There's no other wheel park in the state, and I wondered where it came from. painting.
Marketing department.
It's a bit sexier than a skate park, Jane.
Work choices.
They can justify.
Through your worship, that was an internal decision made, and I believe the reason for doing so is provided in the report. I just can't find it exactly where it is. Apologies for that. But a wheel park is more.
11.
Thank you. A wheel park is more inclusive for all types of wheel-based recreational activities. A skate park might just mean skateboards or skates.
Thank you. Yes, it's interesting that we've actually made provision for when we were doing the consultation and the development of the Constable Hyde Memorial Garden Playground and that upgrade. We actually made provision specifically in that for wheeled trikes and scooters and bikes and everything. We put paths in everywhere so kids can utilise those. So I just want to make the point that we actually do have a wheel park, and as Councillor Henderson has, Councillor Henschke, I beg your pardon, has said, that we have given consideration already to this. It's for small kids in their playground. But I actually take issue with the fact that we're being accused of not providing and doing enough for our youth in Burnside. We have many opportunities for our youth, and we've all worked on these projects for many years. We've got our sporting clubs, our playgrounds, play spaces, parks and reserves. We've got rugby, cricket, baseball, tennis, Glenunga Hub activities, which have been mentioned, which are oversubscribed, little athletics, or a whole range of athletics clubs, a range of activities of our library and civic centre, open spaces, much cherished and held onto open spaces in our parks for exploring and passive recreation. And we haven't actually asked our youth what they want. We've just had a small ginger group who've actually told us when we were doing the consultation on Constable Hyde that they wanted a skate park, many of whom did not even live in this area. As I said, we've already made provision for small children in our, well, they already have capacity in many of our play spaces. Certainly in Wombat Waterhole, you see kids all the time on their small rollerblades, scooters, little trikes, and their trainer wheels, learning to ride two-wheelers. Many of us recall the controversy generated when a skate park was proposed. And I don't believe we actually have had demonstrated in the City of Burnside the need for a skate park. My residents, many of my constituents, residents in Beulah Park, are certainly not happy with the proposal to locate a skate park in their already very well developed, well utilised reserve, which has a garden scout hall, tennis courts, a kids' playground, and a small area for passive recreation. So I don't believe there is a need demonstrated for a skate park in the City of Burnside, so I won't be supporting the motion. Thanks.
Next is Councillor Davis.
I actually think the mover and seconder shouldn't support this, because if we want to get this up and if we want to have a skate park and explore this further, I think that this motion will kill it. And the way it will kill it is we'll go out to those residents and we'll say, what do you think? And I'm very concerned that all the negative things about skate parks will come up. So graffiti, noise, gangs, behaviour that's not liked by people, increased crime. They're all the stigmas that are associated with this. Now, I used to have a skate park down the road from my house, and I was very interested in it, and I wanted to go and play, and my dad banned me for the exact same reasons. He said they're a very bad crowd and you shouldn't associate with them and stay well away from the skate park. And naturally, I very much disagree with that and went to the skate park. And my perception of those people is very different from his. However, the point is that if you don't actually go there and if you don't actually understand what happens there, then you will have that perception. Now, if we go out to community consultation and we as a council get a report back saying 10% of residents are for it, 90% of people are against it, and have the following concerns, we're done. That's it. What are you going to do then? You can't then continue with it. So I think that if we progress along these lines, we'll kill it. The way that I believe that this discussion needs to happen is it shouldn't come to council in its current form. There needs to be a lot more work done by councillors and myself in terms of discussing this with that group who are currently interested, and also the other groups that we can access. So we should have councillors go and talk to schools, go and talk to the principals, and find out whether there is a sufficient number of people who are interested in putting this somewhere. Because at the moment, I don't see a huge groundswell of people sitting in the gallery. I don't see a huge number of people writing to me about it. I've had a number of residents write to me already and say they're concerned about graffiti and vandalism and noise and gangs and all of those types of things, but I haven't had a groundswell of anyone in the community come and say, we want you to come and spend $1.5 million on this project or $500,000 on this project. So I think that if we progress with this in this particular fashion, it'll kill it. And what I'd suggest as an alternative is that councillors who are interested in this, we should progress this ourselves, try and demonstrate that community leadership, try and go and get those people behind us, and then as a group and ascertain how much community support there is for a particular notion, and then go and do it, so that the councillors who can come back here and say, I have a mandate, and I went and talked to the principals. These are all the parents who have actually signed a petition. And it wouldn't be that hard, in my view, to go to those different things, ask the principals if they could support you, to sign the petitions, to actually get a proper feedback from our residents as to who's involved. Because what will happen here is they'll come back and everyone will say no. And then you got nothing. And then that's it. And so I think that that would be a tragedy. So in my view as well, I don't think that tonight we can rest on the argument of we don't do enough for our youth, because we do a huge amount for our youth. We have a 3D printer, we have a PlayStation, we have a toy library, we have an anime kids book section, we have, if you go on our Facebook page, there's science is fun things, we have all of our sporting activities, we have open ed cinemas, we have family fun days. We do actually have a lot of activities for our youth, and I think trying to push through a $1.5 million expenditure or $500,000 expenditure off the back of that single point isn't going to fly. And particularly, I don't think our residents are going to let that fly. So if you want to see, in my view, if you want to see this continue, then don't vote for this tonight. I understand you moved it and seconded it, and I understand that other people around here support it. What I would suggest, though, is that councillors have more work to do. And I think that we should go and find that group and find those people and represent them. Because at the moment, it very much feels to me like I'm representing someone that I've never met. You know, I haven't gone to these groups, I haven't met with the parents. I'm trying to represent someone, advocate for a project on behalf of a group that I've never had a discussion with. And I think that that's the problem with the people who support it here tonight. So what I would suggest is we vote this down, that we leave the motion here, and we come back to council with some more work, because the next time, if this goes ahead, the next time it comes council, there won't be support and it will be dead. And I think that would be a great shame to have it end in that way. So I'd suggest that everyone should vote this down tonight, and we have some more work to do, and we'll come back with a motion on notice at a later stage when we're ready.
Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, and I do thank Councillor Hughes for putting the motion forward, and I was very pleased you got a bell too, which, well done, your first bell. Haven't got there yet. Sometimes I think I'm with Councillor Lemon on this one, she might be surprised, but I'm just wondering, this is perhaps the wrong group to even be discussing this. If we're all in our 30s, some of us are, but not many of us, we'll probably have a lot different debate. And the reason I say that, you know, I heard about the Linden Park primary school kids who are ecstatic about us talking about a Will Park. I've been talking to young mothers in my ward, and surprisingly enough, I thought I might get a negative reaction, as Councillor Davis said. I got a positive reaction. And so I thought, oh, gee, there's something here that it may go further. But the first point I want to make is George Bolton. In the 1960s, he wanted a swimming pool in Burnside. There were rocks thrown through his front windows, and would you believe it's now the pride of Burnside, right? but the things that he went through to get that pool built were absolutely amazing, and he did get it done. So let's not be scared. Let's be a bit brave here in talking to residents, and I'm sure the staff will understand this and how they put it across. I think that's very, very important. It's not a knee-jerk reaction. I disagree with Councillor Pickett on that particular issue. It has been talked about a fair bit. But the third point I want to make is that there are 3 new Olympic sports next year in 2020, and they are 3-on-3 basketball, rock climbing, I'm not too sure how they do that, but anyhow, and skateboarding. So the profile of those sports, which the young people are more attracted to nowadays, rather than the football and cricket and hockey and so forth, will be significantly enhanced over the next couple of years. I just want to make that point. The only thing I disagree with Councillor Hughes and the second to Councillor Carbone is the fact that both Jenny and I believe Kensington Gardens isn't the right location. Happy to leave it in the list. And also I think the JB Ware Reserve is far too small. If we have a Will Park there, there'd be no grass area left. But still, you know, I'll be happy to support the motion to move it forward. Thank you.
Councillor Hughes, you have a question?
I just had a question of Aaron. Just wondering if you can explain, or perhaps give some more information about what community groups have already been consulted, including schools.
You can come back with a second question.
Yeah. Okay, so through the chair. So we've had meetings as per the council resolution. We've had meetings of the skate park for Burnside group. We've also spoken to scooter, BMX and roller communities. We had some groups in to help us work out the criteria for an ideal sort of skate park. They included, as I guess per what it says in paragraph 3, the Little Black Bike, Skate Therapy and Skate Australia. We also had discussions with Marrickville High School students to get their sort of key ideas about what they would like to see in a Will Park and that sort of thing as well. Also, they were year 11s, I was just point out. That's the groups we've consulted with so far.
Did you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Mayor. I had some questions, some things to talk about and proposed amendment, so I might go through in that order, if that's all right. First question, with regard to the consultation you made with neighbouring councils, was there mention specifically from these councils that did have wheel parks about antisocial behaviour being an issue at their wheel parks?
Through the chair, sorry, that is one of the questions we did specifically look at. Generally speaking, the advice we got was that if you put the park in the right location, the issue of antisocial behaviour is not really relevant. And they basically made the point that if you put a basketball court or a playground in the wrong spot, you'll get antisocial behaviour in those spots. So it's more about putting it in an area that has the right passive, surveillance and that sort of thing. That was the advice we got.
Following on from that, and that's certainly something you took into account as part of your report in choosing prospective sites?
Through the chair, yeah, that was one of our key criteria. Yep.
Wonderful. I am going to. I'm a big supporter of the concept of the wheel parks, and I congratulate you on the development of this very thorough report. Recreation should be absolutely a priority in our community. Moves that allow for increased physical activity should be seen in a public health sphere. The youth aged 5 to 17, as outlined in the report, are primary users of these facilities. And this council area is also outlined in this report that the higher than average number of residents aged in that target demographic in our.
It's okay. I just checked. He is allowed to speak before he adds an amendment.
I checked with that. I checked with that.
So
yeah.
all okay.
Yeah. As outlined in this report, wheel parks are good for health and well-being. They represent accessible recreation activity. In fact, It is going to become a new Olympic sport. There is a wide range of people, not just the youth, that engage in these activities and sports, and they contribute to city vibrancy. The anticipated negative aspects of a proposed wheel park, I think, have been addressed extremely thoroughly by this report, and I have every confidence that due regard will be given to intelligent design that seeks to mitigate any anticipated effects. This has been a long-running issue with consistent grassroots support. There are provisions for this within the Council's corporate plan, our open space strategy, our sport and recreation strategy, and our playground strategy. And the proposed consultation is detailed and innovative and supported by the 2017 Community Survey. Listening to the debate this evening, I thank all the councillors for their perspectives and inputs, and I do have a couple of amendments to make to the motion. So I have just whipped them up very quickly here this evening while we've been debating, so I hope they ring true. And
we have only two people who can possibly support this or second these amendments, so those two people might need to consider this very carefully.
I'm hopeful that it comes across positively. So the first amendment, these are additions. Yeah, so keep all four the same, and we're adding. The council investigates and undertakes consultation with potential users of a wheel park within the city of Burnside and the wider community with regard to both a desire for a wheel park in a conceptual sense to be developed, as well as gain resident perspectives on negative aspects of a wheel park. And following point for point 6, I've got that, I can email this to you.
With correct spelling.
And number 6, also that council report back, that administration reports back to council regarding options for the potential scale of a wheel park. I guess the idea behind these amendments is that we do want to cast a wide enough net to get somewhere with this. I believe we need to do this correctly. We need to do it right. I have an enormous faith in the administration that has taken us this far. I think taking these specific sites to the specific locations is good, but I think, as has been highlighted this evening, there is a want for, I guess, further specific perspectives about a wheel park from the greater community, and I hope that these amendments bring that in. And that's all I've got to say on that. So hopefully someone can second those amendments and they're acceptable.
Could you just check that you're happy with the wording that is up there now?
Yeah.
Whilst those two people are going to consider whether or not either of them wish to second it.
Question.
You certainly can ask a question. Councillor Cornish?
In regards to the amendment, where we're actually saying a wheel park, I just wondered whether or not that locks the administration into one wheel park, or whether or not the option to potentially 2 or 3 smaller in some of those reserves may be set for younger kids, middle-aged or something like that, is also incorporated in that. Would you consider that or not? Do I ask the mover of the amendment to do /S? Yes. /S. Would you have the okay with /S?
Yeah, /S for after the word wheel park. Wherever the word wheel park arises. Councillor Cornish, you are next.
Yes, I am. So I will happily second the amendment of this motion. I do believe it adds to the outcomes and the gaining of knowledge from our residents in this consultation period. It also provides a bit of limiting scope in terms of the scale and bulk of such a park. I was going to speak, if I did, and call a little bit of poppycock on some of the things that have actually been said around the chamber. It has been quite some time that we've gone out to consultation on a skate/wheel park in the city of Burnside, and sentiments may change. Community does change over a period of time. This activity has, in the 80s and early 90s, probably didn't have a great view or outlook from many in the community, but a lot of families actually get involved. Parents take their kids on their little scooters. I even saw a 70-year-old lady actually scootering around the city of Adelaide the other day as her means of transportation. So it is certainly not young people, this sport. It is the entire family, from grandmothers right the way through to young children. I'm certainly very supportive of going out and actually testing whether or not this community wants this again. I think it's something that we should be doing and finding out. I do not think that it's something we should be blocking at this stage. I do share the concerns that some have mentioned about the manner, and we should garner greater community support. Well, this doesn't stop us actually doing it. You can actually get those people involved in the consultation process. Become the advocate now through this motion. It is, we've set some time and money against this. Councillor Davey is right. She thought that this council should be looking for locations for a wheel park, skate park going forward. The council has come back to it. They'd set aside money in the budget for this consultation, and I think we should actually honour that commitment that we actually made as a council to this community, that we'd investigate this. We said we would investigate this, and we should. It's not a scary option. We've got many options there, and added in the additional concepts of potentially smaller little parks spread around, so it gives families an option closer to their home that they could actually use. And I'm fully supportive of this motion, this amendment. We need to go out to the community. It's not a scary thing. It's not going to be overly costly. And please, please, please support this motion.
Yeah. Councillor Jones, I think you are the last one who can speak and will speak.
Don't get a bill.
Can I?
Sorry, are you speaking to the amendment?
No, I'm going to ask some questions first,
That's
if I may.
fine. Go ahead.
So my first question is, when we want to build something at work, I go and see the facilities manager and ask how much it's going to cost. And he gets out his estimating guide and says it's going to cost $1,500 a square metre. So what's the published cost per square metre of building a skate park? That's question one.
Through the chair, basically, given the variations that you can have in a skate park, it's almost impossible to say a square metre cost estimate for a skate park. There's a whole variety of different types. Sorry, wheel park. There's a whole variety of different types you can have. We looked at some that have been built recently, and that's where our cost estimates are based on. But there's no sort of general guide to a wheel park, unless you actually sort of define what you want in it first.
Okay, that's question two. I'm surprised, but question two is, did we consider locations other than parks to put the skate park in? Given that, I can see people might not want it in a park, but if you put it on, say, a derelict industrial site, people might say it's actually an improvement on what was there before. So that's question two.
Through Chair, yes. We started off with a list of, I think it was 133 different sites. They weren't all parks, so some of them were reserves and some were car parks and various sort of pieces of land that council owned throughout the city of Burnside. Right. And to those we applied some criteria, some basic criteria like size, shape, what they're being used for now, was it incompatible purposes and things like that. We reduced that to a short list of 12 sites, and we took those sites and based them on the criteria we got from the consultation with some of the skate park groups as to what they thought was an ideal.
But does it have to be land we already own? Couldn't we go and acquire some land?
It's not impossible.
I'm just thinking if it, if there was some contaminated land that you could. So that's my third question is, I notice with respect to Penfold Park as potential site, the report says that would be contingent on remedying the existing antisocial behaviours there, and I was wondering how that was going.
Through your worship, we're just finalising that report to present potentially at the next council. If not the next one, it would be the first one in March.
Is it?
Oh, and there was a recent info doc.
Yeah, well, I saw the info doc. It didn't look very promising.
It will be considered in a report where you'll have all the details in front of you.
Okay. And then my fourth question was with respect to the JB Ware Reserve, it mentions the possibility of it being viewed as an extension of the Ridge Park Reserve just across the road. But given that would involve children crossing first Portrush Road and then Glen Osmond Road, I kind of wondered how that would work exactly.
Through your worship, it was more a complementary use and adjunct to the facility there. That facility is based on older kids, is that correct? The older children at the skate park. So if you were to put one there, you would provide one for potentially younger ages.
Right. Okay. Right. Cool. That's it. Thank you.
Since everybody now has spoken, we go back to Councillor Hughes. No, sorry. Sorry. Yes, we have to vote on the amendment. So does the mover have to speak again? No, they don't. It was just vote. Okay. So I'll move the amended motion as it is on the screen at the moment. Those who are in the amendment. Those in favour, please raise your hands. Those against. Right, the amendment is carried. Now we go back to the original motion, amended motion, and there's no one else can speak, so Councillor Hughes can sum up.
Okay. All right. I think we should have finished on Councillor Cornish because he just finished on a high, but I think there's been obviously some great points made this evening, and I think one of the issues around antisocial behaviour was highlighted in the report that obviously if we get more people to a space and make it a safe space that people will visit, there'll be a means of passive surveillance within the area. So I think some of those issues around antisocial behaviour can be overcome, thank you. But by really making this a community-owned space, and I think one of the things that we, will get hopefully from this amendment is a sense of what people want within our community and where it can be located. And I do think that as elected members, it's important for us to all make these connections, and I think we do always hear from people who have a complaint, but I think we also need to put ourselves out there and make different connections. So speaking to things like the skate park for Burnside group, there are groups out there that I think we as a body need to all connect with to see the demand for this within our community. I think the consultation will obviously be a very important thing to see whether this gets up, and I know having spoken with Aaron today that there's obviously council has an approach around how they're going to do that and try and do it a little bit differently so that we can really connect with a greater number of people within the community. I think one of the points that's been raised tonight is there are a lot of other services for the youth, and I certainly don't disagree with that. I think the report does talk about that being a great portion of our community, but this is really around an area where we can have unstructured play, and it's not about a game of tennis, a game of rugby, joining a club. This is something that people can get out on the weekends, pick up their skates or their scooter or whatever it is, and head down at a time that suits them to use this facility. So I think it's not just about the youth. I guess the research that I did before tonight and the connections that I tried to make before getting here, there are skater-sized classes that you can attend, and that doesn't have an age limit on it. So I think it's not just an age limit. I know the report did focus on that, but this is really something that the whole community potentially can use, and I think the amendment that Councillor Hugh will put forward around really determining Whether there is a demand for this will really help us make a decision going forward. Let's vote.
Right, are you ready to raise your hands? Those who are in favour, please raise your hands. Those against? The motion is carried and a division has been called, so by Councillor Davey. Those who are in favour, please stand. That is Councillor Davis, Councillor Piggott, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Cornish, Councillor Henschke, Councillor Hubel, Councillor Dawes, Councillor Turnbull and Councillor Carbone. Those against, Councillor Davey, Councillor Davey, and still remain standing because I think it was only Councillor Davey, Councillor Jones and Councillor Lemon. Motion is carried. I would like a motion now to move for an adjournment for 10 minutes. Is that what? Second, Councillor Davey, did you formal motion from someone who's sitting down? Okay, Councillor Cornish, formal motion to adjourn for 10 minutes, seconded by Councillor Hubel. All those in favour? Carried. We have a quorum. Do I have to do anything to get back in? Do you have to have a motion? I think.
To move back in.
Does that require a motion? Yeah. Okay. We need a motion to return to council. We have sufficient here to begin. So move to restart the meeting from Councillor Dawes and seconded Councillor Cornish. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Against? Right, carried. All right, we now move to 13.5. No, we don't. Parking policy. 13.8. Because this is the remaining one. And we're finishing one from last week or not? What we were. Well, that was the agreement. That's what I said at the very beginning of the meeting. Sorry? Oh, it's new.
It's new. Parking policy's new.
Is parking policy new? Ah, so it's not carried over from last time. Okay.
You don't actually have to bring
and we don't have to because there's no one here. So that's all right. Look, I'm just correcting that because there is no one here who's interested who's in the gallery to observe the conversation about the parking policy, and it was a new one. It was not carried over from last time. So I'm going to put that back in its regular order into 13.8. So it'll come after 13.7. And so I'm going to move now to 13.5, which is the CEO report, page 127. No, because I said we were going to finish these reports first. That is the core business of us being here. And we had an indication at the beginning of the meeting to support that, and that is where we are headed. No, I am not arguing about that. I have said this is what will happen. It is my role to determine which order these things happen. The business of our meeting is to do these reports. They are more important and they are essential to be finished tonight, whereas the other ones, the motions on notice, it does not matter if they are not completed tonight. If they are completed, very good. If they're not, please give me the regulations. The regulations are, according to presiding member as part of responsibilities of presiding over and chairing the meeting in an effective manner, unless, of course, the meeting expressly resolves to the contrary. Unless this occurs, the Mayor, in undertaking the functions and responsibilities of presiding member and with intentions to ensure the meeting proceeds and decision-making occurs in the manner consistent with the objectives of relevant legislative instruments, may determine to reorder the business items. Hence, I am making that call to make sure that we get through all of our reports tonight, and those motions on notice are, hopefully, we'll still get through tonight, but I have moved them, and I said that I was going to move them. And excuse me, don't interrupt. Don't interrupt, Councillor Davey. Let me finish my sentence, and then you may speak. We had this vote at the very beginning of the meeting.
Not clearly, Madam Mayor. I understood that we were voting for the deferred items from the last council.
And then that we would go through all the rest of the reports.
To the normal agenda. Sorry?
I will reread what I said. Sorry, questions without notice and motions without notice. Sorry, that's with a notice. It is my intention, with the leave of the meeting, to move into question time now and to move the motions on notice until after the reports, as many reports relate to interested parties in the gallery and others were deferred from last meeting. Now, you indicated that you were not, some of you indicated you were not happy with that. We had a vote about it, and the vote was that you were agreeing to that. Now, if you wish to vote again, I'm perfectly fine with it. But I believe that the council's business is to get through these reports. They are our priority. The three other motions that are on notice are not essential to the decision-making tonight.
They are. This is our agenda that we were working to.
And there are plenty of times that the previous mayor changed the agenda and there was not so much of an argument and a hassle that you are creating at the moment. It is within my rights. I've read the Act, read the legislation, what it says, and I'm allowed to change the order.
I wish to move a motion. I wish to move that we revert back to the original agenda as written and specified in our motions order of meeting papers.
Yeah, I understood that the council had already given leave for me to change the order, and therefore this motion was not acceptable.
That's my understanding as well.
Yeah, that's what we did at the start.
So 13.5?
Correct.
Which is mine?
13.5, it is the CEO report, page 127, and it was withdrawn by Councillor Piggott.
Yep.
That's going to be better explained next.
In actual fact, I withdrew it to ask a couple of questions, but given the time, I might just do that outside the meeting. So if I could, I would like to just move that the officer's recommendation that the report be received.
I'll second.
Councillor Davis is seconding.
Yeah, I said that.
Do you wish to speak, Councillor Davis? Is there anyone who wishes to speak on the matter? All right, those in favour of... you don't wish to sum up? Okay, so those are in favour, please. And those against? Carried unanimously? Carried. No, it wasn't unanimous. Sorry. Okay, so it was carried in... All right, now we move to the 13.6, which is the Garrock nomination, page 141. And again, I believe that's Councillor Piggott.
It is. And if appropriate, actually, Lady Mayor, I was hoping to nominate myself.
Maybe I can move it then.
I'm happy to nominate you if you'd like.
Me too.
Well, I don't know with the protocol whether somebody else might. But,
I believe that you are able to nominate yourself, and that is quite within the realm for you to do that. And of course, if there is anyone else who wishes to nominate, they may also do so in the same way that we would be selecting somebody to go on a panel or an interview panel or anything like that. So go for it.
Okay, well, perhaps if I put a pitch as to why I might be worthy of a nomination. I was nominated as the report said.
Shouldn't we move it and then ask for any other nominations, then we do a pitch?
Well, I'm moving the motion at the moment. I'm
That's just
blocking anybody out. But yes, I'm happy to do that.
Let's do it.
All the eggs in one basket.
Yeah. So, I suppose I really should ask, are there any further nominations to anyone who wishes to run for or put their name forward, realising, of course, this does go to the LGA, and the LGA makes the decision, not us. Councillor Henschke?
Thank you, Mayor. I wish to nominate the Mayor, Anne Monceau.
I am declining, and very politely, Councillor Piggott actually contacted me with regard to this, and I said, no, I am not going to nominate. I think I have quite sufficient to do to focus on the needs of this community and to be mayor of this council and help to support the needs of Burnside as my priority, at least for the first 2 years. So I'm not interested in going beyond that. So I appreciate Councillor Piggott's contact with me, and I appreciate your nomination as well, but I'm very happy to support Councillor Piggott's nomination.
Look, I went on the speaking list. I had a question. I guess I was looking at the...
I didn't call your name. It's Councillor Hubel, and now you can.
I'm sorry.
Did you... We don't have a seconder yet. We didn't actually quite finish the motion, I believe that Councillor Piggott, you are the only nomination after I've declined mine. So...
Can I move that we change 3 and say Councillor Piggott, and I'll move that get rid of the voting part of it. Yeah.
That's fine. Okay. And do you wish to?
Very briefly, I think that.
Sorry, you wish to speak?
I do think that Councillor Piggott would be an excellent candidate for this, and I understand, and I think it's a great decision by the mayor in terms of like the responsibilities of mayor is huge, and I think that I had this concern as well with the last mayor in terms of the number of activities that they do and the responsibilities that they hold, and I think that Grant Piggott will, or Councillor Piggott will do us very proud on that board, and I hope that he gets up.
Thank you, and we need a seconder. Councillor Hugh.
Councillor Piggott needs to read out the motion.
She can't read the...
No, it was moved by Councillor Davis.
We do need to read out the motion for the sake of those people who are at home, so would you mind please reading the motion out? You are moving it, Councillor Davis, so if you could just read it out. Thank you.
She won't see me.
Henry's trying to read out the motion.
Oh well. All right. For the benefit of the 8 people or so listening at home, One of them is which my mum, probably, so hello mum. That the report be received, the Council submits a nomination for Councillor Piggott to the Local Government Association for the position of member on the Greater Adelaide Regional Organisation of Councils. 3, that the Chief Executive Officer be authorised to advise the Local Government Association of its decision through the nomination form provided. 4, the Council note that an election process across LGA members will follow if the number of nominations received is greater than the number of vacant positions and there is no automatic entitlement or quota for Eastern Region Alliance Councils. And if you missed any of that, you can download the agenda online and follow along at home.
Do we have a mover and do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Yes, I'd be very happy to second this motion. I think Councillor Piggott will be a worthy nomination for the City of Burnside and would well represent us. So I'm happy to second this.
No further speakers appearing on my screen. So are you ready to? Do you wish to speak again? All right. Those who are in favour of this nomination, raise your hands. Those against, unanimously carried. Now we move to, we did the regional subsidiaries report already, so we're moving to 13.8, which is the parking policy, which is of course Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Mayor Monceau. I do have an alternative motion to run. And I will read that out. So, item 1, that the report be received. Item 2, that Council seeks a report to be presented at the 30 April 2019 meeting from administration with options to amend the parking policy to increase the benefit to residents affected by parking restrictions, reduce or remove the evidence required by residents to prove the need for additional permits, reducing or removing the costs of parking permits for residents, and provide greater administrative efficiency in allocating permits. And 3, that Council authorises the administration to provide every T1 permit holder with 1 V2 10 individual day visit permits permit free of charge before the 30th of June 2019. I won't labour on this. We've had a few deputations. I know a number of you have received a lot of emails from a lot of our residents. As you can see in the report, there was a change in the policy last year, in February of last year. As a result of that, 84% of previous permit holders have no longer got permits. We've gone from 3,800 permits for people to be able to park in front of their own properties, down to less than 700. I've asked a series of questions on notice regarding the numbers by suburb, so that you could potentially see that certainly in the 3 main suburbs in the Rose Park and Toorak Gardens ward, being Dulwich, Rose Park and Toorak Gardens, a large number, greater than 50% in every single one of those suburbs has been reapproved going forward with the new policy. On top of that, although there's a lot of anger about having to pay as well, which is also the other reason for the question on notice in terms of the average rates paid. As you can see in Rose Park and Toorak Gardens, the average rate per property is one of the highest, or some of the highest averages in the City of Burnside. So those rate holders actually pay a significant amount more in some instances for their rateable properties, yet have to then pay again to park in front of their own properties if they want an additional permit apart from the T1. So I've tried to ask those sort of questions, and it's about equity across the board. There are many in the City of Burnside that get services, and specific services, and they have specific areas of need. Up in the foothills, extra street sweeping happens, extra rubbish collection for bushfire season occurs, and the City of Burnside provides that free of charge for safety measures. But when you get close down to the city, when parking's an issue because you get lots and lots of people parking in the area, the issue, the residents down there have to fork out extra money. to park in front of their own homes, which I do think is a little bit of inequity there. On top of that, as the report also states, in Rose Park and a little bit of Dulwich, there are a number of streets that actually in the area historically have 2-hour parking 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that means visitors, that means family members late at night, they can only park in front of their homes for 2 hours. I did a drive down the streets. Hewitt Avenue, Watson Avenue, Alexandra Avenue, Grant Avenue, Swain Avenue, all of them all have 2-hour parking 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which is highly unfair for family members, for visitors wanting to come over on a weekend, or people staying over at night who could potentially get a fine. After this policy has come in, I have received at least 8 residents calling me about, very angry that they've actually received a parking fine for parking in front of their own home. Many of them weren't notified that they had to reapply for a permit. Some of them are, 70 plus odd years old and are on very, very fixed incomes, and a $55 fine is extraordinarily a huge impost for them when they thought that they were doing the correct thing. They still had their permit from the year before stuck in their window. They didn't realise they had to reapply for it. It has been quite a significant issue for many in the area that I live in, and this motion only seeks for a report to try and look at resolving some of the issues. I hope you support it.
Councillor Davis, are you wishing to second this motion?
Yes.
Thank you.
I believe at the time I voted to implement this new system, and I think. And if I recall at the time, I believe at the time it was actually Councillor Cornish didn't support it on that basis, because he did have a number of concerns from residents, and I believe it was his other ward councillor at the time who was advocating for it and supported it. And so on that basis I put it in, and the problem was at the time was that there was a shortage requirement, so there's not enough parks for people to park in. Now since that time there seemed to be a lot more angst that I've seen, a lot more people who are very much against this new system than there are for it. I haven't had many people come and talk to me and say this is such a great idea, that it's working well, that it's much better. And in fact I think that the continual complaints that it isn't working from when we implemented it and following have only become louder. So I think that it's certainly a good idea to consider revoking it and going back to the previous system and having a look at changing the policy back to what it was before. As it is, it's a report, and so I think that if there are a number of residents who are saying, no, this is going to work much, much better, then they have that opportunity to come to us and say, no, keep it in place, don't take it away. But I think that this will offer some relief for residents who are feeling particularly aggrieved by it. So I will second it.
Councillor Carbone.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I just wanted to reiterate that I know in the past week it's been centred around Dulwich, Rose Park, Turret Gardens and so forth. It is an issue across Greenhill Road. It certainly is an issue in Glenside around Burnside Village. For 9 years I lived in a regulated street, and I can tell you now it's a pain in the arse. The fact that every year you've got to justify that you need 3 permits. Like I'm not old enough and wise enough to know that I need 3 permits. Other residents, for example, need to go through all that of, proving beyond reasonable doubt that it's required. They might have a single driveway and 3 cars. All 3 might fit on the property, but, for practical reasons, they might want to have 1 or 2 out in the street and so forth. So I'm glad to see that this amendment has included the fact of, reducing or removing the evidence required. They all pay their rates. They're all old enough to know better. And I'm not going to go over it too much, but as Councillor Cornish has already mentioned, the cost, the idea around charging people to pay their car in their street in front of their house is a bit rich. They already have all the issues with parking at the moment, living in a very condensed area with customers and staff, and so there's already a problem. And the last thing they need is these 2 things, to pay a token gesture, to pay in front of their house, and also the fact they have to prove you know, that they needed as well.
Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so we've said I won't repeat about the feedback from the community, but there's been a lot, and it's been entered on the elected members portal. I wish to amend this motion by adding to it. I propose that a local area traffic study is conducted in priority areas, and this is a suggestion from residents, a number of residents in Dulwich actually, so credit to them for providing that feedback. Also, a lot of anguish is being caused by the paper system, a physical permit that has to be moved from one car to another in the household. If a solution can be developed for that. But that may well come under 2-point, perhaps it's not covered by, we can add to 2-point A, 2A perhaps, we could add it in there. Or D, provide greater administrative, efficiency in allocating permits and efficiency for the households. And finally, I wish to amend this motion, something that's really important, I believe, because we've had a lot of the community having to go through the activity of going to council to explain why they...
Instead of debating,
what's that?
could you put the amendment so we know what you're talking about and then debate it rather than going through it, so then that way I understand what the amendment is and then discuss it afterwards?
I think what you need to do first of all is actually go back to point 4.
Point 4,
because it doesn't actually give direction to the administration as to what exactly you want there. It's a bit vague. A local traffic area.
Yeah, so thank you.
What for? What's the purpose of it?
To conduct a local area traffic study for the need, to identify the need for the permit system in that street. Well,
I think Councillor Hitchcock needs to try.
We're all trying to help.
I know you're trying to help, but it's actually not helping.
yeah, the priority areas identified by the administration.
As identified by the administration.
Because they know where the priority areas are.
Unfortunately, they don't know what those priority areas are, so you would need to do this.
As identified by the administration. Yeah.
Sorry? Exactly.
I think the administration are unclear in relation to or the relationship between the local area traffic study and the parking issue.
Okay.
Is that correct, administration?
Yes. Right, okay. Well, this came from residents of Dulwich specifically then. It may be pertinent, as we heard tonight, to the Burnside hospital area. But to start, it's the Dulwich area, if you want me to give a specific location.
Yeah, it's not traffic.
Well,
might be a separate motion.
Yeah, no, sorry. Okay, traffic study, parking study. My apologies. Yeah, we know what...
Sure. Can I just respond?
Yes.
So through the chair, if I can just explain what the traffic team are doing that report into Magnus. So probably about 3-4 months ago, the team undertook a review of those priority areas in terms of parking issues and parking permits that we would undertake an extensive survey on. And that work has been undertaken. We've chosen Dulwich and Rose Park in particular. So there's an area that's been identified that our traffic engineers have been out surveying the current parking situations and the parking restrictions that are in those streets. And the plan is that certainly in March we will be in a position to put some recommendations forward for the community's consideration and feedback with a view to implementing those changes in April. The confusion from our point of view, Councillor Henschke, is the fact that we're undertaking that work already.
Okay then.
There's confusion over parking study, which we are doing, as opposed to traffic survey, which is something quite different. So we are actually doing that already.
So are you happy to delete number
Yes.
4, please?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Henschke?
Thank you for clarifying. And the final amendment is that this policy is work in progress almost. We've tried a policy, it's been changed. And so we're at a position now, pardon? Right, so I'm getting there, thank you.
No.
Yeah, so the policy that the last point on this amendment would be that we suspend fines to residents and ratepayers until such time that this policy is endorsed or agreed by the elected members, by this council.
Point of order, we have an extant policy currently in operation. We can't change current policy and be guided by
do you see that point 4 as being a change or an alteration to the current policy and therefore cannot be permitted?
Through the chair, with the proposed amendment in 4, that is something that we won't be able to enforce because it will be impossible for the administration to identify who are residents as opposed to people that just park, perhaps they're employed in the area. So that would be very difficult, if not impossible, to actually enforce. So that's not something that we could actually do for you. So it will have to come out.
But don't residents put their paper permit in their dashboard and we can identify a resident?
We can, but where there's a valid permit, we wouldn't be fining those residents at this point in time. So that's talking about fines to residents and ratepayers. That's obviously only if they go outside of the rules of the permit and the parking restrictions that are in place.
We do need to move forward, Councillor Henschke. We do need to move forward.
I think, to be fair, Councillor Henschke's had enough time.
All right, Councillor Henschke? That's how it stands at the moment, but it has been pointed out to you that that is not possible for the administration to operate under point 4. So are you willing to remove point 4? I'm just being told that it's potentially ultra vires.
Through the Mayor, it's potentially ultra vires because it's asking us to do something that's intrinsic within the policy.
Yeah.
And to not expiate on a blanket or to suspend expiations on a blanket basis when the policy
says that you have to.
Says that we have to is inconsistent.
I wish to amend further that we rescind the policy.
We can't. Can you explain again?
Through the Mayor, you can't do that. That requires a written notice of motion.
I think what Councillor Cornish has attempted to do is to try to get a policy rewritten. And the only way we can do that is not to try to do it tonight. It's actually about getting a report which is exactly what Councillor Cornish's motion does, very appropriately and effectively, so that we get a report back as to what can or cannot be done, and then we respond to that. So I know that you're after a quick fix, and I know that many residents are putting you under pressure to do that, not just yourself, but also Councillor Cornish, and all of us, because we've all received emails. So we have to follow proper process, and this is a proper process, so we need to remove point 4.
Okay, thank you.
So then the only difference is D.
So there now is no amendment.
No, 2.3.
I've got some questions.
That could be seen under the
The rest of us have time?
slip rule.
Unless Councillor Cornish.
Unless, if Councillor Cornish, are you happy with an extra little bit onto B?
There's no change, so yeah.
So, so you're happy with it, leaving it as it is? And okay, great. All right. I have next to speak Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I'd have a couple of questions to start off with. Is it possible to, in this report or now, that all of these streets of Dulwich Rose Park area be allocated for residential parking only? Is that possible to do? That's question one.
Through the chair, not in a global sense, the parking permit system is there though to place an emphasis on residential parkers, hence the sign it might say 2p. So ordinary people or people who aren't residents can only park there for 2 hours, but the residents get the benefit of RPE, resident permit exempt. So that does swing the pendulum in the favour of the residents, but there's no way we can ban parking, I don't think. We can explore that in the report, but the short answer is probably not.
Thank you. And I note, the other question is, how long does it actually take to allocate a permit? We're talking about greater efficiency, so I thought it would take a week or so.
Through the chair, it would take less than a week. It's generally a day or two.
Right, okay, thanks. Thank you, I'll speak now. I've had some of these issues, although nowhere near to the extent that you have in Toorak Gardens ward, and I know exist in Frueville and Glenunga. Leabrook and Beulah Park have had some significant traffic problems, and from park and ride visitors to the area who park all day, people who just bop into Hazelwood Park, park their car, pull out their bike and ride into town. People in Beulah Park where there are narrow fronted houses, lots of single fronted houses, many without any off-street parking. But I actually supported the amendments to the parking policy, which Martin Cooper has just talked about, because I thought when we were looking at the time, we were looking for the fairest way we could implement a policy across the city of Burnside. And that's our huge challenge, where we've got areas where there aren't many car parking problems to those where there is significant congestion and where we're surrounded by businesses. So it is really difficult, and I take my hat off to the staff for how they manage it, because I think they do it really well. But I then also hear, and I haven't had any complaints since this has been implemented, but I have been really surprised in recent weeks to hear the problems that are going on in Toorak Gardens ward. So I'll support this motion, but yes, I don't know what the solution is. Are we providing enough off-street parking when we have developments in our areas? Should we restrict those who have businesses in the area, especially the big businesses who haven't obviously made provision for their own staff and customers? I don't know. It's a really vexed question, so it'll be interesting to see the report. Thanks, Councillor.
Councillor Piggott.
I had a couple of questions. One is, could I just ask, number 3, is number 3 not a change to the policy and therefore should not run? Well, I read it as that if I apply for a T1, I get a V2 as well. So I get a set of steak knives. So I would see that as a change of policy. I don't think it is. I think it's providing more for the, providing what they get free, more they get free.
So it's changing the cost.
They wanted one that cost them $15. Let's change the policy.
No, it's changing a cost schedule. Yeah, it's changing a cost schedule.
Let's see what happens. I think you should take it out.
Yeah, figure out. It's changing a cost schedule.
Just see how it plays out.
But it's a
So we've had to have some discussion about this because it actually relates to the fees and charges policy. And because that policy is impacted upon in point 3, it cannot be included, Councillor Cornish. So Councillor Piggott, you are absolutely right. So you'll have to...
extraordinarily unhappily withdraw it.
Yes, appreciate your extraordinary unhappiness, but
right,
unfortunately them's the rules.
I haven't got started yet.
Councillor Piggott, continue.
I think that's appropriate. I congratulate the mover for doing that. The second question I have is, it was said tonight, one of the issues that's coming up clearly is the enforcement of the people not having residence permits in those streets coming off Fullerton Road. My question is, what is our current regime of doing that, and how do we answer the charge that has come out a couple of times, the fact that that's not being enforced significantly? Is that true?
Through the chair, no.
It's not true?
Not true. We have a dedicated parking officer that will work his way through Rose Park and Dulwich and Eastwood on a regular basis. Take Courtfield Terrace, for example. We know he's there about 3 times a week because we've been dealing with that recently. So no, it's not true. And I think one of the claimants that claimed it was true got a ticket himself.
Yeah.
So that's evidence that there is some enforcement.
I don't think the claim was that you weren't doing it at all. It's just that perhaps we weren't doing it enough. Yeah. But thank you. My third question was the old policy, this much-loved policy that we binned out. What could I get if I lived in Dulwich Avenue? How many passes could I get without cost of money or having to jump through hoops in terms of you having to come and look at my property and work out how many off-street parks I had? In the 2016 version or whatever that we changed.
Through the chair, under the original policy, the original parking policy, the resident could get up to 3 permits that were free of charge. Slightly different though, in that 2 of them would have been vehicle specific, or what we used to call fixed. So if you had 2 vehicles, you could register that property, you could get a permit for each one of those, and on top of that a transferable one. So 3.
Okay, and last question, why did we change that?
Well, through the chair, it was a part of a holistic approach to looking at our parking policy. The change from fixed permits to all transferable ones was for the sake of flexibility, because a transferable permit can be used by any person on any vehicle. So that was, I guess, the reason behind moving from a fixed scheme to a transferable scheme.
Right. Okay. And perhaps if I could speak to it now. Look, I do sympathise. I mean, I represent a ward that this is really not an issue, and I accept that. However, I think as someone in that position, it does allow us to perhaps look at it with clarity you don't necessarily enjoy when you're getting hit around the head every 15 minutes from people in your ward. I think the problem with this motion is that it's just picked up everything and let's rerun the policy. It's effectively a complete policy review, as I would see it. That's the mover is nodding his head, and I feel there's a good reason why we shouldn't do a complete policy review. There's 2 good reasons. One is that the review was done and the changes were made for a good reason. We used to have 3,800 permits out there. We used to have streets that were oversubscribed. Not every street was oversubscribed, that's certainly the case. But with the sort of carte blanche that used to be out there, we had the issue that that potentially, and in some it was starting to happen, potentially the permits out there were a multiple of how many cars we'd physically park there. The whole thing was pretty sort of scattergun, and the policy was brought in to pull that back, to actually put in a policy that works around the city for all the various things it needs to do, and have it that it was quite a controlled sort of manner. And I think, and for that reason, I don't think we should revisit this in every shape or form, which is what this motion tries to do. Having said that, it's clear that we may have overcorrected. And the other reason why I think we shouldn't do this is that I certainly haven't had the correspondence that Peter has had, or Lillian, or whatever, but, I've got the ones that went to all of us, I think, I've got 8 or 10. Just looking at them, all of them, and if you pick up the one, actually, I can't quite fix him, but all of them, if you put aside the whole concept of having to pay for parking, that's just not right because they already pay rates. Well, I think that's an argument that's not really something that's tenable. There's all sorts of inequities in life and certainly living in council. Various wards enjoy various things, and we all pay rates. So I don't think as a concept that's such a harsh thing. It's not like it's $5,000, it's $50. I understand why people are a bit narked about it, but I don't think that's a reason. If you take that out of the mix, and the fairly shouting that happens in a lot of these emails about the council almost setting out to deliberately to ruin people's lives, if you put that aside, you can actually solve all but one of them, on my reckoning, if we'd actually given them a second pass. And you'd solve them all, including the guy. You'd solve them all, including the guy from around the hospital who was threatening to take us to court over the deed. You'd sort him if you had 3. So I think what we should be asking for tonight, actually, is to have a report that came back that asks for the consequences of what would happen if we gave them 2 and not 1. Tell me how many that would put out. Would that put pressure on streets? Would we still be okay and not oversubscribed? How many issues would that resolve? What would it cost us? What administration it would save us? I'd like to know that. And the second one is I'd like to know what it would cost us, or what are the consequences of 3, which effectively is going back to the other one, although we perhaps may have broken the back of it a little bit in the fact that previously it was a well-established process that you just got a parking permit. Clearly there's a lot of people in the city that it actually isn't bothering. It's not affecting. And the benefit of that is it does reduce the permits out there. So I think that what we should be doing tonight is not asking for throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I think what we should be doing is asking those 2 questions. What would happen if we gave them 2? And what would happen if we gave them 3? Because if we did certainly 3, I don't think we'd have any of them here. There'd be a few wrinkles in it, but by and large, their main issues are, the flexibility in the system and the principle of the whole thing. And I'm guessing that 2 probably lands okay without crowding up the streets again, and 3 goes back to where we were. So I think that's what we should do tonight, not on this motion. And if we voted this down, I would put a motion to that effect.
Councillor Lemon.
I'm okay about supporting this motion for expediency's sake because it's 10:22 and I've still got a motion on notice that I want to get to tonight. So I'll be brief on this because I have to speak because I'm in one of those areas where we've got a lot of restrictions. I'll take a deep breath. In Eastwood, 271 in the previous way. Back in the day that everybody wants to go back to, there were 271 parks. We had 174 requested. In this last year, we've had 116 approved. What should interest every one of us is I have not had 1 single complaint. In Glenside, 111, 41 were requested, 37 have been issued. I haven't had 1 single complaint. I had a single complaint last time by a man that wants to park his camper van in a restricted area, oversized. But I'll get to that in a minute. In Fruval, 273 under the previous regime, 104 were requested, 75 were allocated, not one complaint. This issue that we're talking about is specific to a few streets in Dulwich, and I don't see why we should be throwing out a perfectly good parking policy because you've got some loud people in a few streets. Hi guys. A few streets in Dulwich. So let's look at those few streets in Dulwich, give them what they want, because what I did, I've had these emails like everybody else. I've been a councillor for 8 years, and in my inbox, I've got a little sub-inbox that says parking. So read the email, put it in the parking sub-box. They are the same people every time that come back to us. The same people. There isn't one that is different. So, it's Dulwich. And tonight we had somebody that actually, I have to say, this person actually bothered to come in and threaten us with legal action and make some snide comments about us. But, you know, hey, you've got to get your amusement somewhere. And that was interesting about the hospital, but I didn't get from him any sense of what the problem with the hospital was, how it was there, who was actually parking, were they parking all day. So I don't know how that one instance comes in. So let's remember, when we're looking at parking policy, it's about parking. Our streets actually exist for traffic. Let's remember that. They don't exist for people to park their cars in front of their houses. They exist for through roads, unless it's a cul-de-sac. And not all of them. We haven't got that many cul-de-sacs. They are streets for traffic, not for providing parks. The other thing that we're actually seeing a lot of in Glenside, and possibly in Eastwood, but not really in Eastwood because it's a heritage suburb, but certainly in Glenside, you're getting infill development where you're having very small blocks, no long driveways, roller door carports, and people downsize, but they don't downsize because their roller door carports is full of all the stuff that they can't bear to get rid of, so they park their car on the street, and the missus parks their car on the street, and the kids park their car on the street. And then we go along and we say, hey, you've got 2 parks there, and you open the roller door and it's full of stuff because they can't downsize. And that's something that is not our issue, and it's not their neighbour's issue, and it's not the people that use the streets issue. It's their issue. You downsize, then downsize and use your driveways. And the person that wants to park his camper van isn't using his driveway, isn't using his roller door, and is wanting to put an oversized car on a street that is actually narrow and subject to parking restrictions. Our policy is a good policy. I don't think we should be throwing it out for a few streets in Dulwich, but I'm happy to get some stuff back from administration and we can have this wonderful conversation and all those emails again at the end of April. And I look forward to it.
I need someone to move for an extension of time until 11 o'clock, please. Councillor Piggott, seconded Councillor Carbone. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it, I think. Better look at it again. Could you raise your hands, those who are in favour, an extra half hour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's where I was right the first time. Okay, because that's 12. Against? There are 5, unless they change their mind. All right. Now we have Councillor Hubel.
Look, yeah, I see this motion as an attempt to look into the new policy, find out whether it is the best way we're going to be doing things, and I think that's certainly the spirit that it's been moved in. Although I do want to throw a different perspective into the mix. There are a lot of people in the city of Burnside that are not able to park in front of their houses. Along Waterfall Gully Road, areas of Glen Osmond, parking on the street just isn't an issue. Granted, they don't have large businesses that have been developed around the corner, causing extra troubles. In a previous life, I lived in Marrickville Council in the inner west of Sydney. There was 1 parking permit per car per property, because there literally was no more room for any more. And I think what we need to keep in mind is that the different wards have their different benefits, have their different downfalls. Different parts of the city of Burnside have different characteristics, including the amenities available, which includes on-street parking. So I do support this motion. I do support having another look at the policy, but I think we should also be mindful that, that different areas are going to have specific problems. And I think the idea that Councillor Piggott raised of looking at, I think it was Councillor Piggott, I'm sorry if I got that wrong, looking at specific problems in specific areas may be and a more targeted approach may be the way forward.
Councillor Dawes.
I was going to give a Henry-esque type speech, but decided not to because of the time. Yes, yes. So, general observations.
I don't believe that was actually an insult in any way.
I think we as councillors are in a privileged position. This is the third time we've talked about getting residents' opinions, and we're doing it all over again. But we're in a privileged position because we receive feedback from a number of sources. This does put us what I call an inflated position where we know all the answers. But we also have a responsibility, an obligation to listen to residents. I received 8 emails and there's some good comments in there. The new parking policy, especially in Dulwich, in Glenside, perhaps Toorak Gardens, not sure, for their own peculiar circumstances, it's caused a lot of angst. Perhaps not Eastwood and some of those that Councillor Lemon has mentioned. But I've always been a believer of this, that policy is there to guide us, not control us. I do accept Councillor Pickett's term, perhaps there was an overcorrection. I did like those terms. I think that's probably the case. It does seem to me that a one-size-fits-all does not work as was first intended. So that's a concern I have. But the comment which caught the most attention to me was from one resident, and you all read it, "This is Burnside, not Manhattan." And I thought, oh gee, yeah, you're probably right there. But there were some other insightful comments as well. One of the residents says, check out the City of West Torrens model. For some reason, that must be good. I'm hoping the administration have noted that. You know, already Councillor Henske mentioned about the local area study, and one said put in place a fair appeals process. They're all valid points for consideration by the staff. But I think clause 39 is the key here, that it refers to community consultation in relation to Dulwich and Rose Park in particular. It seems that's where the main problems are. I also want to make a point that we had a confidential workshop with the Burnside village people, so I can see in the future that Glenside may be affected by whenever it is. I won't give the time, but he did say over the next 2 or 3 years. So they're just observations for me. I apologise to Councillor Henry. It was done in jest. I'm sorry, but that's all right.
Yes, Councillor Davis, you have a question.
Yeah. Is it the administration's understanding of this motion and the intent of it is that it's not to redo the policy, it's not to chuck it out, but it's to, the way I read it, is to essentially remove red tape to make it easier for residents to access the current policy? Is that how you read it?
Through the Chair, administration see this as a review of the policy. For example, the reduction or remove the evidence required by residents to prove the need for additional permits. a big part of the current policy is the fact that we undertake those specific reviews, case by case, to determine whether there is sufficient off-street parking or not. So that, by its nature, requires a complete review of the policy.
So, but the administration might come back and say, we can reduce the level of evidence and keep the existing policy in place. So it's open to the administration to come back with essentially the same thing by considering the removal of red tape.
Through the chair, no, we can't see that is the case. That's requiring a specific, at the moment we do specific activities to determine whether certain conditions are met as to whether a permit's justified or not. We cannot amend or reduce that process in any way to circumvent that outcome or determination.
Okay. All right.
Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. Question for the administration. Is it true that on Alexandra Avenue that there is 24-hour restrictions and residents and ratepayers can only park for 2 hours maximum, 24 hours a day? And is it true that these parking signs, 24 hours, 2-hour limits, was set up for the Queen Victoria Hospital, which no longer operates?
Through the chair, yes, it is true. But through the parking review that Martin mentioned before, it's probably not giving away a secret that our recommendation to the community will be that we remove 24-hour restrictions.
Councillor Lemon, you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question, and it's a follow-on from Councillor Davis's question. My reading of this is we're seeking a report from administration with options to amend the policy, with options. And my reading of the report is that when you come to us with options in terms of amending A, B, C and D, you will actually be saying in those options what the likelihood is of watering down the policy or anything else. Am I seeing this incorrectly? When you come with the options, it'll be, this is an option, but it's likely to lead to this, or we will have to change that. These are the consequences, yes, that's the word I was looking for, consequences. That's correct. Thank you.
Don't have any more names on the screen. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Otherwise, I will pass it back to Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Mayor Monso. I will be brief. It's been a very long night. Yes, that exactly was my intent of the motion, that there were options. So Councillor Piggott's options, I would expect, could be incorporated into this report to come back in terms of, I'm not expecting the whole policy to be completely reviewed and upended by this council. It is an incremental thing, and I want to know if we do X, what will Y happen, and what levers in the policy do we need to pull and push to get the balance quite right. I think the balance isn't quite right for a number, and it could be actually picking up on those terms that Rose Park and Dulwich are a completely separate beast, and they should have a separate section under the policy. That might be something that the administration look at. I don't want to ascertain or give them direction because I certainly did that. Look, I'll just say thank you for supporting it. It is certainly a big issue in the area that we do have, and I'll leave it there. So I hope you support the motion.
Those who are in favour of the motion, please raise your hands. Oh, it looks like it's unanimous. Well, okay. The next one is 13.9, Bylaw Management and Enforcement, page 199. It's Councillor Davey.
Are we on? Page 199. 199. Thank you. Going between. Thank you. I'm happy to move in accordance with the report, that the report be received. I just had one query, two queries actually, and one relates to ranger activity. And I know the administration have been doing some work on extending the reach of our rangers to actually make, allow them to cover weekends and perhaps early morning or late night activities, because I think some of our people who act in parks and operate in parks and certain other activities realise the range is going to be coming around from 9 to 5. So I just wondered, I had a question, is there any change to how we can operate our rangers, and so that we can have them operating outside those activities, those hours from time to time? Laneway parking after hours and on weekends, that's the other one.
Thank you for the question. So through the chair, I just confirm that we do have currently have an out-of-hours service. So 24/7 service. Anyone with any concerns can phone the customer service number, and the out-of-hours service will deal with that complaint. And if required, an out-of-hours ranger will attend to an incident. That obviously depends on the incident at the time. We do have weekend rangers. And depending on the season, particularly during the summer months and school holidays, we prioritise the attention around some of our significant parks like Hazelwood Park. So we do have a weekend ranger on available for that period at the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. So there are currently no changes to that plan. We are looking at whether we bring in-house the outsourced service. But if we do that, that will give us some additional scope at the same cost to provide a slightly extended service. And I think Paul's got some information on the litter and nuisance review as well.
Thanks, Martin. As Council would be aware, when the local nuisance and litter bill came through and the responsibility was tasked to councils to deal with it, we at that time recommended to Council that we absorb that function and trial it to see how it goes. We also recommended that Council seek EHA's consideration of the matter and whether EHA could actually take that responsibility on board, and the response was that it would be not cost effective for the ERA group of councils to do it, although for Burnside it probably was. Notwithstanding all of that, the number of complaints in relation to local nuisance and litter has increased substantially to the point where we think we cannot absorb it any further. What we're doing as an ERA collective is to see whether ERA as a group of councils can manage this outside of an EHA process. If there's some appetite towards doing that, then we'll bring something back. If there isn't an appetite or it's not cost effective to do it through EHA, then we'll be putting a business case to council to probably look at additional resourcing for litter and local nuisance, but it will probably include also increased after hours services.
Councillor Davey, do you still have some other questions?
No, I'm fine.
You're finished? Okay. Then Councillor Hubel. Sorry?
I'm happy to second this.
You are?
Yeah, I have some questions, but I'm happy to second it.
Yeah,
as well.
you're happy to second it?
Yeah. Now, not sure who's directed towards Barry or Michelle, still here. This is in relation to the Bluestone curbing policy, specifically.
You're on the second one.
My apologies.
I'll second it.
You're still happy to second it?
I'm still happy to second it. My apologies.
Yeah. My question, and apologies. I received a number of complaints from the CFS directly in terms of parking through access ways. I think it's up on Hayward Drive in particular, and there are a number of cars which continually park across it, and I know that the administration have been working on it can I ask what the solution to this problem is and what the administration is working on to prevent the parking of that? Essentially what they're doing is they're parking over the line and will block access to fire tracks. So trucks can't get through.
Through the chair, the first stage of the solution was to upgrade signage and make it abundantly clear that you can't park there. But it appears that some people ignore that. So the best thing for someone to do if they see that is to ring the council immediately, and even if it's after hours, and the after hours ranger can attend to that. It's too late the next day, so it's got to be a phone call.
Can I just make a suggestion, since I too have those issues over that fire access track, and that would be, there is a gate there already. Would that gate be better? And CFS would, as a member, you might be able to advise, but if that gate was moved from where it is now down to the roadway, level with the roadway, instead of where it is. All right.
Anything to do with the bylaw management enforcement?
All right. Okay.
I thought it did.
I'll talk to you after.
It's about ranger activity, I do think, but yeah.
Councillor Davis, you happy?
No, I think that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Don't have anyone else who wishes to speak on my screen here, so I will hand it back to Councillor Davey. Put the motion. All right, those in favour of the bylaws? Those against? Looks like unanimous. 2, we've already done Torrens Avenue, so we move to Streetscape Policy 1311. That's also yours, Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I move in accordance with the recommendations with a slight amendment. To the at the streetscape policy, that the streetscape policy be amended at 6.5.1 to add and utilise WSUD principles. So that then becomes, streetscapes will be designed and managed in an environmentally sustainable manner and consider opportunities for water-sensitive urban design options. I want that to say and utilise water-sensitive urban design principles. And under Bluestone at 2.3, no, I'll leave it at that. Thank you. So it's just to amend it to say that we need to be looking more at, in accordance with our strategic plan, utilising water-sensitive urban design principles wherever we can in terms of our streetscape. And environmental sustainability, that's what it's all about. So this is, sorry, page 256, 6.5, 6.5.1. So I hope that makes sense. Streetscapes will be designed and managed in an environmentally sustainable manner and consider opportunities and utilise.
No, it's saying it's considering it. We're saying you should utilise it, not just consider it.
Not. And utilise.
Can we add where feasible?
Yeah, all right, where feasible. Yes, I'll add where feasible.
And where feasible, utilise. Oh, all the other way around. That's fine.
Yes. Otherwise, the Bluestone is a worry. I'm not sure if we've still got stocks of Bluestone in the depot that we can use to repair our Bluestone streets with. Is that I'll just ask the question through you, Mayor, if we do have bluestone stocks still.
Through the chair, there is a small amount of bluestone available at the depot.
And we can use that for repair of our streets with bluestone. Okay, thank you. Hope you'll support that.
Did you wish to speak, Councillor Davey, or you just had the amendments to make? Okay. All right, so Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. Regarding a streetscape policy...
We didn't get a seconder. Okay, thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Hughes, a second.
I don't know.
Councillor Hubel, you're next. Okay.
I'll go. You can press again, or should I cancel? Doesn't matter. All right. Had a question about the bluestone curbing policy, particularly around the BPOD stormwater retention cells. I understand that they are best installed when there is curbing works already underway. There's no mention of them specifically within the bluestone curbing policy. I'm just wondering whether that's the installation of those retention cells is something that's applicable on these bluestone streets.
Through the chair, I don't believe we generally use them in bluestone curbed areas. It tends to be when we recurb a full street, which is where we'd normally use concrete curb and gutter because we can put them in there. Having said that, we don't have a huge number of streets that have bluestone curbs. It's quite small in proportion to the overall volume in the area.
Thanks, that's all.
Now, Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. The streetscape policy, I'm looking at the relevant legislation and possibly related policies and looking to amend to also include under 2.1 the Aboriginal Heritage Act, which is an act to provide for the protection and preservation of Aboriginal heritage and for other purposes. We have assets such as Kensington Park and our frequent locations for Ghana meetings and ceremonies. So I think we also acknowledge under relevant legislation other heritage acts, and so I'm looking to amend 2.1 to include the Aboriginal Heritage Act 1988.
This was just a question of including the policy, so that can be fixed under the slip rule to be added. Or did you want it? Or did you want it specifically specified in here, or just added as a policy in the list of policies, relevant policies?
Added it as a relevant legislation in the policy. A reference, so when the policies are used, that act is also considered in decision making.
A good initiative, and I think that can actually be incorporated under the slip rule, can't it? Okay. Done. Okay.
Yes, also water sensitive urban design's been covered, pervious paving. It relates to the bluestone policy, whether that has to also refer to water sensitive urban design, or is it covered to the administration? It's covered? Okay, fine. Okay, lastly, lighting. The policy for lighting. How does the policy protect for heritage lights, heritage lighting in the area? Is there any relevant legislation required? Should we refer to heritage legislation for public lighting? Because we have...
Again, under the slip rule, you could add that?
Yep.
All right.
And also under lighting, have we considered in July 2017, the Institute of Public Works has developed new street lighting guidelines. Is that included? Thank you. That's all, thank you.
We need to now, if there's anyone who wishes to, we need to move a motion to extend the time. Councillor Piggott, seconder. Councillor Hubel. Those in favour? It would be until 11:30. So those in favour are 1, 2, 3. Those against? Right, motion is lost. We will be finishing in about 4 minutes time. Sorry? We won't be finishing the meeting, no, but we will be finishing the part of the meeting we can finish at 11 o'clock. Yes. Let's vote on this one, please. What? It's moved, seconded.
Is the motion being put?
I thought we had.
No.
Oh, I apologise. Okay. Those who are in favour? Those against? The next motion is Councillor Cornish. This is the first of the motions on notice, 9.1, on page 9.
Thank you very much. Given that it is in the agenda, I don't need to read it. I'm not changing it from its current form. It's pretty self-explanatory. I hope you support the motion.
A seconder by Councillor Pitt. Does anyone wish to speak? Right, I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hands. Those against? Unanimously supported. You can't do that.
I want to include it in. I'll pick it up from this spot. Yes. Because I don't want to get it shut. So I want to adjourn this meeting.
Formal motion then, please.
I'll move a formal motion to adjourn this meeting.
We'll have a right to see the motion up on the screen.
6 p.m.
Do we have anything booked for that night? We can move it back one. Robert, do we have anything booked for that? No, that's not the night. We do. Somebody coming at 6 o'clock?
It'll be rescheduled.
Okay, fine. I just wasn't sure who it was. It wasn't Vicky Chapman that night. No. Okay. Doesn't matter. Okay. To adjourn this meeting until 26th of February 19 at 6 p.m. It is the 26th. Yes.
Sorry, maths isn't what's going on this time.
No, I know it's 26. Okay. Those who are in favour? Don't we have someone? There's no debate. Not on this one? Okay, so no. Really? Right, so they're right, the motion is carried.
So